Chapter 1735. His heart was a little hurt. Boss, you're being too petty with your words. As your brother, I'd like to meet my sister-in-law. At the same time, I'd like to see what a magnanimous lady she is to be able to subdue an ice block like you. You'll have plenty of opportunities when the time comes. You'll be able to see her at the engagement ceremony very soon. At the mention of Xianxia, Mu Yaja's lips could not help but curl into a gentle smile. It was a casual and gentle smile that had never been seen before. Seeing this, Lu Jinyu thought to himself, I didn't expect Boss to fall in love one day. As a single dog, he could smell the sour stench of love. He felt like he had been cruelly abused. I've specially asked you to come over for the wedding ceremony to discuss the process. After all, I don't know much about it and wanted to ask for your opinion. Lu Jinyu broke out in a cold sweat. Boss, I don't know either. I've never been married before. I don't even have a girlfriend. After a pause, he suddenly said in a low voice, It's a wedding. According to the rules, first of all, we have to buy a new house as our wedding home and equip it with a more luxurious wedding car. Then, we have to hold a proper wedding ceremony. That's all there is to a wedding. I didn't ask for your opinion in this regard. Mu Yaja was speechless. Lu Jinyu was confused and lost. Then, I want to make the wedding more presentable. Lu Jinyu naturally agreed with this point. Yes, it has to be. Boss's wedding must be grand. There's no doubt about that. Mu Yaja continued, if we want the wedding to be grand, we need to spend some money on it. However, I've thought about it. There's no need to use the Mu family's capital. That was the main consideration he had for this point. He had promised Xianxia that he would give her a wedding of the century that would attract the attention of the world. Naturally, he had to fulfill this promise. In that case, he would need some capital. Mu Linfeng had said that he could hold a wedding, but he could not use the Mu Group's account or withdraw funds from the consortium. He had quite a large sum of money in the Mu family's account, but he could not use it. After all, Mu Yaja had agreed to Mu Linfeng's request. Since he had spoken, there was no room for negotiation. There was no reason for him to go back on his word. If he said he wouldn't use it, then he wouldn't use it. He had always been a man of his word. Mu Linfeng was waiting to see him make a fool of himself. He thought that without the support of the Mu Yaja definitely did not have the money to hold a sensational and respectable wedding. He was certain that Mu Yaja did not have the ability to conjure up so much money, unless he wanted to use the funds in Mu Group's account. If that happened, he would become a laughingstock. He had spoken tough words, but his actions were like this. He must have been looked down upon by others. However, what Mu Linfeng didn't know was that Mu Yaja had secretly cultivated a force outside and possessed a chain of assets that couldn't be underestimated. He had plenty of confidence. However, the problem was that his personal funds were already flowing through the industry chain. They were constantly in operation and invested in various projects. If he were to withdraw them all at once, it would hurt his vitality. There was no need to hurt his many years of foundation for a wedding. Hence, he looked for Lu Jinyu to discuss how long it would take for him to withdraw the funds without harming the operation of the funds. Chapter 1736. In this aspect, Lu Jinyu had more experience. Hence, he asked, how much money can you withdraw from my account in a short period of time? Lu Jinyu was stunned for a moment, unable to react. Boss, do you mean, you want to use your own funds to hold the wedding? Yes. Why? Lu Jinyu didn't understand. If they got married, the Mu family had a lot of assets in their account. It wouldn't be a problem to prepare a few 100 million yuan overnight, let alone in a short period of time. Why would he use his own funds? You don't have to question my decision. I have my reasons for doing this. Okay. I understand. Lu Jinyu was silent for a moment. He thought for a while and said, Boss, I've done some calculations. The funds in our account are now operating in various capital chains. The funds in the capital pool are all tied up. We can't withdraw much of the idle funds in a short period of time. It's about tens of millions. Mu Yaja frowned. That's too little. It's not enough. Lu Jinyu sighed. There's no choice. During this period of time, the end of the year is approaching. The funds in the capital pool are very tight. It won't recover in a short period of time. It's already the limit to withdraw this much. Mu Yaja tapped his fingertips on the table and asked, if I want to withdraw 500 million yuan, how long will it take? Lu Jinyu raised his eyebrows in surprise. He then said, at least, after the new year, the funds will recover. A few 100 million yuan won't be a problem. So long. What about the wedding house? Do you need to arrange it yourself? Mu Yaja said in a low voice. Didn't you hear me just now? I won't use the Mu family's capital. I have properties under my name now, but they are all the Mu family's capital. If I say I won't use them, I won't use them. As for the wedding house, I'll definitely buy another one and write it in her name. Lu Jinyu pursed his lips. The wedding house isn't the biggest problem. The problem is, boss, how do you want to arrange the wedding? The investment in the wedding can be said to be a bottomless pit. There's no limit to it. Naturally, we'll do it in the best way possible. Mu Yaja paused for a moment and then said, I don't want to delay the wedding for too long. Get it done as soon as possible. As for what you said about the funds only coming back after the new year, that's not a problem. I'm not optimistic about getting married in winter. It would be very appropriate to hold the wedding in spring. Pay more attention to the funding issue for me. Lu Jinyu was suddenly even more curious about what kind of woman Xianxia was. He actually made Big Boss think about how to arrange a grand wedding, and even didn't hesitate to transfer funds from the capital pool. This was unprecedented. Boss, when is the engagement ceremony? Mu Yaja smiled and said, the preparations are almost done. I'll invite you then. Okay. Then I'll be looking forward to it. Lu Jinyu sat down at the table. Suddenly, he regained his serious expression and said, but let's put that aside. Since you've asked to meet me, I'd like to mention something to you. What is it? Mu Yaja's expression also became serious. Then, Lu Jinyu discussed with him the recent problems that had arisen in the company. Lu Jinyu never made decisions on key issues and always followed his advice. 5 years ago, Mu Yaja began to focus on cultivating his own power outside of the Mu group. Chapter 1737. Lu Jinyu could understand his decision very well. As a century-old wealthy family, the Mu family dominated the entire Asian economy. It was not an exaggeration to say that they were one of the top wealthy families. Perhaps there were very few consortiums in the world that could stand shoulder to shoulder with the Mu Corporation. However, Mu Yaja was determined to leave the Mu family and cultivate his own business. Firstly, it was because he was very ambitious. Although the Mu Corporation was deeply rooted, it was difficult for it to develop further because of the constraints. The Mu Corporation had a political background. It could be said that it was the economic heart of the country. If it was involved in the front line, it would cause the entire country's economy to collapse. Therefore, there were many restrictions. Secondly, because it was a family consortium, it involved the interests of many people. The involvement was too deep, and every step was treacherous. Therefore, he was determined to establish his own Xianxia financial group with his many years of experience and connections in the Mu Corporation. After 3 rounds of financing, it gradually got on the right track. Until now, the Xianxia financial group's development momentum was majestic. It had become a force that could not be underestimated. Under the name of the Xianxia Financial Group, there were 4 major companies. Among them, the first company, Easy Buy, was a senior shopping website established 7 years ago. When the website was first established, no one cared about it. However, Mu Yaja had a unique insight. As early as 7 years ago, he saw the development momentum of online shopping and invested in it. A year ago, Easy Buy was listed on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange and had a huge market value. In addition to the shopping website, Mu Yaja was also involved in many other industries. In addition to real estate, resorts and financial services, there were many undeveloped emerging industries with limitless potential. As Mu Yaja's right-hand man, Lu Jinyu had always been in charge of all the affairs of the Xianxia Financial Group. If there were any problems in the financial group, he usually did not report to Mu Yaja. Instead, he handled it himself. He had business talent and unique skills, so he could often take charge of the overall situation. However, if it was more important and troublesome, Lu Jinyu would refer to Mu Yaja's opinion no matter what. He listed out all the big and small problems that had recently occurred in the company to him. Mu Yaja gave his own suggestion. The two of them discussed for a long time and actually hit it off tacitly. That's what I was thinking as well. I didn't expect that I would agree with you. There are some things that you don't have to ask for my opinion. I believe that you can handle things well. After all, I have my eyes on you. You have the ability. Lu Jinyu smiled and said, "Since we're done talking, shall we practice?" He looked at the billiard table at the side and felt an itch in his heart. It's been a long time since I've sparred with boss. My hands are itching. No. Mu Yaja raised his wrist and looked at his watch. It's getting late. I should go home. Lu Jinyu frowned. Why? Why are you in such a hurry to go home today? Could it be that sister-in-law is at home and is in a hurry to go back to accompany madam? Anne. Mu Yaja smiled. Noticing the smile on his face, Lu Jinyu suddenly fell into a daze. Mu Yaja saw his strange expression and raised his eyebrows. What's wrong? Look at your expression. What's on your mind? Nothing. I just feel that boss has changed a little. Lu Jinyu said truthfully. Changed? Mu Yaja was intrigued. How has it changed? Chapter 1738. It's an indescribable feeling. In the past, Mu Yaja had exuded a cold aura and a sharpness that only a king could possess. However, once a man fell in love, even his aura would change. Right now, he gave off the feeling that his sharpness had been softened. When he mentioned Xianxia, the smile on his face was one of warmth and tenderness that he had never shown before. Perhaps, this was the biggest change that love could bring to a man. Boss had changed. However, Lu Jinyu was happy to see such a change. In the past, Mu Yaja was like an ice block, high and mighty. He didn't seem like a man of the mortal world at all. However, things were different now. His smile was warm and gentle. He was no longer as cold as before, as if he was difficult to get close to. When he smiled, he gave people an inexplicable warmth. He liked such a change. Lu Jinyu suddenly felt as if he had been fed a mouthful of dog food. He howled like a dog and complained aggrievedly. Boss, why do I feel like I'm being abused by you even though you didn't bring sister-in-law with you? Mu Yaja glanced at him coldly and said, It's time for you to find a girlfriend. Yeah, I think so too. Boss, why don't you introduce a girlfriend to me? Lu Jinyu asked shamelessly. He thought that Mu Yaja would reject him, but unexpectedly, he seemed to be in a particularly good mood today. Instead, he asked him, What kind of woman do you want? Someone like sister-in-law would be good. Mu Yaja's gaze turned cold and he snorted. Dream on. Huh. You won't be able to find another woman like sister-in-law in the world. Don't even think about it in this lifetime. Of course, don't even think about it in your next life. Lu Jinyu was stunned for a moment before he burst into laughter. Boss, do you know that there's only one word to describe you in your current state? It's too apt. What word? Lu Jinyu raised his brows and smiled. Wife's slave. Mu Yaja was speechless. Preparations for the engagement were in full swing. Xianxia didn't know that Mu Yaja had already started preparing for the engagement. At this moment, she was still on set. There was a night shoot today, so she couldn't go home that night. She had to inform Mu Yaja and the two little munchkins in advance. Night jobs, as the name suggested, were scenes that needed to be filmed at night. Therefore, they could only work at night. What was interesting was that when Gu Xiaoyang found her, his face was actually trembling with fear. His usual high and mighty attitude was nowhere to be seen. He rubbed his hands together, looking very uneasy. It made Xianxia nervous. She thought that she had made a mistake. His last question was to ask her if she could stay behind to work the night shift. Xianxia didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Of course, Director Gu. Gu Xiaoyang nodded. That's great. As he spoke, he did not dare to say anything more to her and hurriedly went to work. Xianxia was confused. She thought to herself, Mu Yaja's authority in speaking was indeed not to be underestimated. Now that she was on set, even Lin Ji, who had always been arrogant, did not dare to act rashly toward her. The special treatment made her feel rather embarrassed. Chapter 1739. During this period, Xianxia's scenes had been filmed first. These days, her scenes were mostly with Lin Ji and some other supporting roles. Hence, her time with Hua Jin had been staggered. When Hua Jin saw that she had stayed behind to work the night shift, he was also a little surprised. Sure, I haven't seen you in a long time. You've been so busy recently. Hua Jin's closeness made Yun Shirshir roll her eyes in her heart. All right. Under her special privileges, Hua Jin was probably the only exception. She didn't know if he didn't know or if he just didn't care. Even though everyone in the crew avoided Yun Shirshir, he was the only one who wanted to stick to her all the time. No matter how much Yun Shirshir tried to chase him away, it was useless. However, after interacting with him for a period of time, she realized that Hua Jin didn't seem to have any ill intentions towards her. The prank he had played on her that day was at most a joke. In the past, when someone in the crew bullied her and rolled their eyes at her, Hua Jin would silently watch and make things difficult for them behind their backs. Although Yun Shirshir didn't know whether to laugh or cry, she knew that Hua Jin really didn't have any ill intentions towards her. It was just that. She really couldn't understand why Hua Jin liked to stick to her. Aside from the way he fawned over her, he also took good care of her on set because of his status. Over time, Yun Shirshir also let down her guard against him. Hua Jin, stay away from me. I'm memorizing the script. You're always memorizing the script. You really don't have any interest in life. Hua Jin said quietly. You're the only one who has interest in life, okay? Hua Jin chuckled and playfully nudged her with his elbow. Why did you enter showbiz in the first place? Me? Yes. Yun Shirshir answered truthfully. It's just a coincidence, I guess. Plus, I thought that I could earn money by acting, so I decided to become an actor. Hua Jin pursed his lips in disdain. Boring. What's boring? Shirshir, you're such a strange woman. In such a materialistic circle, most of the girls who entered this circle had great ambitions and aspirations. For example, those who want to be famous, those who want to earn big money, those who want to be rich, those who want to climb the social ladder. Everyone is ambitious, but only you seem to stand aloof from worldly affairs. Since you're standing aloof from worldly affairs, why did you enter the entertainment industry? Yun Shirshir said frankly, to support my family. Hua Jin was silent. He looked at her and blinked his beautiful eyes. He was probably used to her way of speaking, so he smiled. But you're also quite cute like this. She's so silly. Sometimes when she's bullied, she doesn't say anything. She's like a punching bag. You're the punching bag. Do you think I'm like you? If anyone dares to bully me, I'll make them kneel and beg for mercy. Hua Jin smiled and said, Shirshir, you have to know that in this world where the strong prey on the weak, you either submit to the strong or work hard to become the strong. However, for someone like you, sometimes being too kind is actually a sin. I don't like to fight with others. Maybe it's because of my nature, or maybe it's because of my nature that I realize that I'm not very suitable for this circle. Yun Shirshir rested her chin on her hand and looked at the center of the set. The crew was still busy preparing the props. She suddenly asked, What about you? Chapter 1740. How did you get into this industry? Hua Jin's expression changed all of a sudden. His expression turned cold as he retorted, Do you think I like acting that much? What do you mean? I got into this industry a few years earlier than you, so I've seen through the fickleness of the entertainment industry. Sometimes I feel tired of it, but even if I'm tired of it, I have no choice but to submit to the rules of this industry. Hua Jin paused, then turned to look at her. Do you know how much I envy you? Yun Shirshir was confused by his sudden question. You asked me how I got into this industry, but rather than saying I got in, it's more like I was sent in. Sent? Yeah. I got into this industry because my father sold me. Hua Jin answered with a lonely expression. Yun Shirshir was shocked. Sold? She looked at him in surprise, thinking that he was joking. How could there be such a father who would sell his own son into this industry? For the first time in her life, she had the desire to find out more about Hua Jin's background. Yun Shirshir's gaze was a little surprised. She hurriedly asked, What do you mean by that? What do you mean by your father sold you into this industry? Because my father lost a lot of money in gambling and owed a huge debt. He couldn't pay it back, so he sold me to the creditor. As Hua Jin spoke, his lips suddenly curled into a cold smile. He laughed at himself. Isn't it funny? I didn't dare to believe that he would do that back then. I was only 15 years old at the time. Under Hua Jin's nonchalant and seemingly casual narration, Yun Shirshir gradually learned about his story. Actually, Hua Jin was originally born into a wealthy family. His father was a senior executive in a foreign company, while his mother ran a business. The financial crisis of 1998 engulfed the whole of Asia, causing this originally wealthy family to fall into a deadlock. Hua Jin's mother's business went bankrupt. Not only that, but the foreign company that Hua Jin's father worked in also suffered quite a bit of damage. Because Hua Jin's mother went bankrupt, the whole family was dragged into a huge debt. Hua Jin's father saw that at a critical juncture, he took the unconventional sword and secretly embezzled a large sum of money to fill the hole in the debt. Once the matter was exposed, he couldn't pay it back. He was sued and finally sentenced to prison. 10 years in prison made things worse for this family, which was already treading on thin ice. When he was young, Hua Jin was very well. Even though he had a hard time, he never complained. In the 5th year of his father's life, his mother couldn't take it anymore. Calm. Hua Jin's father found out about this in prison and fell ill. After he was released from prison, Hua Jin's father couldn't find a job because of his financial crimes. His ability was extraordinary and outstanding, but other than ability, the company paid more attention to the employee's character. Looking at his resume, he had a criminal record. Who would hire him? Thus, without a stable job, Hua Jin's father could only work at a construction site. The huge difference in life, falling from the top to the bottom, was hard for him to accept. Chapter 1741. As a result, he started drinking and gambling. Every time he lost money, he would drink and get drunk. When he saw Hua Jin, it was as if he saw Hua Jin's mother, that fickle woman. When he thought about how she had left with another man while he was in prison, he felt extremely vexed and would use his belt to beat him. The young Hua Jin had no idea why his father would beat him every time he got drunk. What was worse was that because of his long-term gambling, Hua Jin's father's meager income from the construction site was not enough to repay his debts. As a result, in his memory, he always seemed to be drifting from city to city in a sorry state. In the end, when the creditor came knocking on his door, Hua Jin's father hardened his heart and sold him. That man tossed and turned in bed and finally sold him to a sugar daddy. This sugar daddy was quite powerful and controlled the shares of an entertainment management company. He had signed many artists under him, and they were all stunners. Of course, whether it was women or men, he played very fiercely. When he saw Hua Jin, he felt that if this otherworldly youth entered the entertainment industry and was groomed, he would definitely become a signature idol. When that time came, he would be a money tree. Hua Jin said this and did not continue. It seemed that those embarrassing memories should come to an end. He did not want to say it out loud, afraid that she would hate him. Hate him for being dirty. When Xianxia heard this, she was stunned for a long time. She still looked incredulous. I don't believe it. I don't believe that there is such a father in this world. You are his biological son. How could he do that? The world is so big. There are all kinds of strange things. Hua Jin looked indifferent. When this matter was brought up, there was no change in his expression from beginning to end. It was as if he was narrating something that had nothing to do with him. Anyway, it's all in the past. So, entering this industry is not of my own volition. After a pause, he laughed mockingly and said, Actually, I really hate acting. I don't understand why some people like acting. According to the script, acting a character that is completely different from their own character to gain the audience's favor. Will this give rise to a sense of superiority? What was the difference between this and the actors of ancient times? I didn't like to play along with the audience's emotions. No matter how sad I was, I couldn't show it on my face. Isn't that tiring? Xianxia looked pensive, but said indifferently, Everyone has their own aspirations. Hua Jin suddenly wrapped his arms around his knees and rested his chin on his knees. His gaze was desolate. Sometimes I feel as sad as a clown. Perhaps when others are used to your smile, they can't see the true loneliness in your heart. You obviously want to cry, but you have to pretend to smile. Others smile, but what about yourself? But I feel even more lonely. Xianxia sized him up. She found that he seemed to like this kind of action very much. From a psychological point of view, people who like to sit like this were often filled with loneliness and vulnerability. They lacked a sense of security and were very sensitive to everything. Xianxia turned to look at him sideways. Hua Jin was staring at the ground with his eyelashes drooping. Under the makeup, his fair and beautiful face exuded the unique aura of a man in ancient costume. But at this moment, He seemed especially lonely. Xianxia felt pity for him and couldn't help but want to comfort him. Chapter 1742. Hua Jin, don't be sad. Everything will be fine. Before she could finish her sentence, all of a sudden, a sinister smile broke out on the man's face. Haha. You've been fooled, haven't you? He pointed at her. Seeing her sad expression, he mocked. Xianxia, you're so funny. I was just joking, and you took it for real. You're so gullible. You. Xianxia turned pale with fright. She was so angry that she laughed. You were lying to me? What do you mean by lying? Hua Jin felt wronged. I was just too bored, so I was just joking with you. I didn't expect you to take it for real. It's so funny. Xianxia was so angry that she was at a loss for words. Her face was ashen. Hua Jin carefully observed her expression. Seeing that she was really angry, he was at a loss for what to do. He pursed his lips and pitifully pulled on her sleeve like a helpless child who had made a mistake. With a sad face he said, All right. I was wrong. I won't joke with you anymore. What I said just now was all a lie. Don't take it for real, okay? I entered the entertainment industry because I'm pretty. I was born to be in this bowl of rice. Other than acting, I have no other way out. I'm such an idiot. I actually believed your nonsense. Do you know that I took it for real just now? I even felt sad for you. I didn't expect you to be lying. Xianxia was unusually angry. Why did you lie to me? She asked angrily. Because I think you're very kind. That way, you'll take pity on me and treat me well. Hua Jin smiled. Slap. What he got in response was a cold slap. She did not use much strength. She only did it subconsciously because she was angry from embarrassment. Hua Jin held his aching cheek and stared at her helplessly. His eyes flashed with helplessness and confusion. Sure. Don't call my name like that. Who would joke about someone else's sympathy? You're too much. Xianxia still hadn't calmed down. She found it funny and said, You actually want to get other people's sympathy and let me pity you? Hua Jin, your joke is too much. Hua Jin was increasingly at a loss. He looked at her somewhat uneasily and tentatively tugged on her sleeve. Sure, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I won't joke with you in the future. Xianxia suddenly waved his hand away and said coldly, Stop pestering me. I'm going to film now. With that, she stood up abruptly, threw the script into his arms, and left. Hua Jin looked innocently at her back as she left. He bit his lips and looked like he was about to cry. It was already 2 in the morning when Xianxia and Lin Ji finished their scenes together. When she left the set, Hua Jin was still sitting in his seat, looking at her with an innocent expression. Even if he wanted to go up and talk to her, he didn't have the courage. Xianxia didn't look at him and left. She went home. Hua Jin sat there in a daze and couldn't come back to his senses for a long time. You actually want to get other people's sympathy and let me pity you? Hua Jin, your joke is too much. Xianxia's angry words still echoed in his ears. Hua Jin touched his cheek and bit his lip. He felt like crying. Perhaps it was a little childish to use sympathy to get close to someone you liked. Chapter 1743. Perhaps it was a little childish to approach the person he liked by gaining sympathy. However, he was a little clumsy. It seemed that other than that, he did not know how to attract her attention. Preparations for the engagement ceremony were in full swing. Wuxia did not have many relatives and friends. There were only about 30 people. Most of them were important figures in Jianghu company, including Lu Jinyu. Xianxia, on the other hand, had even fewer relatives and friends. The engagement ceremony was set to be held on an island. Wuxia had meticulously prepared a beach engagement ceremony. Of course, these were all secretly prepared behind Xianxia's back. He wanted to give her a surprise. Xianxia did not know about this. Xianxia had also slowly sent out the invitations that she had prepared. However, on the way to deliver the invitations, an accident happened. Perhaps it was because she was a little tired from filming the night before, but when she was driving, she accidentally bumped into a passerby. She was a middle-aged woman in her 40s. When Xianxia was making a left turn, she suddenly sped off the road for some unknown reason. When she tried to stop the car, She failed to do so and ended up crashing to the ground. When Xianxia got out of the car, she saw the woman lying on the ground hugging her knees. She wailed in pain as if she was in a lot of pain. The first thing she said when she saw Xianxia was to accuse her of driving carelessly and then ask her to send her to the hospital. Xianxia had never encountered such a thing before. Afraid that she would be seriously injured, she hurriedly sent her to the hospital. As soon as she arrived at the hospital, the woman clamored for a full-body checkup. Xianxia naturally thought that her life was more important, so she accompanied her to register and paid for the medical expenses. Then, there was a few hours of waiting. When the full-body checkup was done, the report showed that she had a slight concussion and a relatively minor soft tissue contusion. Soon, the family members rushed to the hospital. Seeing that the injury was not serious, Xianxia asked for a private chat. In her heart, she thought that since the collision was not serious, she would pay for all the medical expenses, as well as some compensation for lost work and nutrition. However, the woman's family demanded an exorbitant sum of 50,000 yuan for her medical expenses. Xianxia was dumbfounded. She had never encountered such a situation before. Immediately, she raised her doubts and said, "Didn't the medical report say that the collision wasn't serious? It was just a little soft tissue contusion and a concussion. The doctor didn't even ask for hospitalization. Why is the compensation so high?" On the other side, the family member said eloquently, "You injured my sister, look. Take a look at the report from the doctor. High blood pressure. High blood pressure. If it weren't for your scare, would her blood pressure be so high? Do you know how serious the consequences are? If your blood pressure is too high, you'll have a cerebral hemorrhage. If it's light, he'll have a stroke. If it's serious, he'll lose his life. Do you know that? My uncle died of a cerebral hemorrhage. If it weren't for you, would my mother be like this?" A few family members surrounded her aggressively, as if they were interrogating an unforgivable criminal. Xianxia furrowed her brows. She had thought that it was just a normal accident and that she would be able to get out of it after paying compensation. She had not expected that she would encounter such weirdos. Chapter 1744. Xianxia did not want to argue with them. After all, it was not easy for these people to come to the city to work. Coincidentally, she still had a sum of money on her. She estimated that she had about 10,000 yuan, which was more than enough to compensate them. Thus, she negotiated, "I don't want to argue with you, but I don't have 50,000 yuan on me. How about this? I'll compensate you 15,000 yuan, and this matter will be considered settled, okay?" When the family members saw this, they were furious. "So what if you're rich? Can you humiliate people like this just because you're rich? 15,000 yuan? Are you King trying to dismiss a beggar? You want to leave after paying 15,000 yuan? Is that even possible?" "That's right. 50,000 yuan. Not a cent less." Xianxia narrowed her eyes. Before she could say anything, the family members started chattering again. "Not only this medical fee, but you also have to pay for my sister's subsequent hospitalization fees. Other than the medical fees, there's also the compensation for my sister's loss of work, nutrition, and psychological damage. How traumatized was my sister in this car accident? You have to compensate for all of this. So 50,000 yuan. Not a cent less." Xianxia did not know whether to laugh or cry. "I can see it now. What do you mean? You're obviously trying to extort me, right?" As soon as she said that, everyone was shocked. She continued, "From the way you talk, I can tell that you're not very educated. You're simply spouting nonsense. Yes, I admit that I was careless when driving and accidentally hit you. I'll take responsibility for this, and I'll also admit to this mistake. I've also paid for the medical fees, but the doctor said that it's just some superficial injuries. These injuries can be treated with a few hundred yuan. I'm already very decent for compensating you with 15,000 yuan. Also, please don't use high blood pressure and high blood sugar to talk about this. Go and ask the doctor if hitting someone can cause high blood pressure and high blood sugar. These illnesses are not external injuries. Now you're pushing the blame on me and asking me to take responsibility. That doesn't make sense, does it?" One of the most hot-tempered men rushed forward and pointed his finger at her. "Are you slandering us? Are you slandering me? We're just asking for some compensation for the medical expenses, and you're saying that we're extorting you. As he spoke, he stepped forward and grabbed her hand, but Xianxia pushed his hand away warily. Just speak properly. Don't touch me. Get physical? Hee. Are you trying to frame me? Have we tried to reason with you? Wasn't he being reasonable? Are you listening? This man seemed to have a fierce temper. He looked very tall and very strong. The muscles on his arms, as well as his ferocious eyes, shocked Xianxia quite a bit. Xianxia was a little impatient, so she said, Originally, I wanted to propose a private settlement and didn't want to bother about this matter. But since you said so, how about this? My car has car insurance. I'll call the insurance company and ask them to come over and take responsibility. Let's see how they deal with it, okay? As she spoke, she picked up her phone and walked to the side to call the insurance company. She had just dialed the number of the insurance company when the man strode forward and slapped her phone to the ground. Chapter 1745. The man pointed at her and said angrily, Are you trying to run away after hitting someone? What? Run away? Why would she run away? The other family members were also agitated. They swarmed forward and surrounded her. Each of them held one of her hands, and someone even went forward and snatched her handbag away. One of the women deliberately raised her voice and said, Are you trying to run away? Are you trying to run away after hitting someone? Xianxia was extremely helpless. Without waiting for her to explain further, the others surrounded Xianxia and shouted at the passers-by who were watching the commotion. Hey! Come and see. This woman hit someone and wants to run away without paying the medical fees. This is a hit and run. She wants to run away without paying the compensation. Everyone, come over and judge for us. Xianxia explained, I'm not running away. I'm making a call. Calling for help, right? Just like in the news, they asked the gangsters to bully honest migrant workers like us, right? Following their shouting, more and more passers-by came to watch. Many of the patients' family members who were waiting for their packages to be checked at the hospital saw that there was a situation here, so they all gathered around to see what was going on. Hence, these family members grabbed others and started to complain to them. We all came to the capital from Wuxian to work. My sister was working at a construction site and was hit by this woman on her way home. After a full body checkup, what was the result? It was very serious. This woman said that she didn't want to take responsibility and wanted to run away after making a call. Does this count as running away? That's right. Our family isn't doing well. There are 7 of us. My sister worked hard at the construction site to earn money to support the family. In the end, she was hit by an unexpected accident. Now she's lying in the hospital, and the family's expenses are cut off. Everyone, please be reasonable. We worked so hard to come to the capital to work, but we were hit by a car. Is it too much to ask her for compensation? It's not too much, right? Everyone was chattering away, one after another, one after another. Xianxia's family members had the advantage in numbers. Relying on their eloquence, they kept brainwashing the onlookers. She was outnumbered and felt like she was in a whirlpool. For a moment, she couldn't defend herself. She finally understood what it meant by, summer insects can't talk about ice. In an instant, the public opinion changed. Many onlookers began to point at Xianxia as they gossiped about her. Xianxia only felt her ears buzzing, as if countless flies were surrounding her ears. It was extremely noisy. Suddenly, someone in the crowd pointed at Xianxia and said, Xianxia. I recognize this woman. Hee. No wonder he looked so familiar. So she's a superstar. I recognize it too. Didn't you shoot an advertisement and appear in an international fashion show before? The family member said, so she's a big celebrity. Once they found out that Xianxia was a big celebrity, many people began to take pictures of Xianxia with their phones. Xianxia covered her face with her collar. However, her actions made more people think that she was obviously guilty. Chapter 1746. After a pause, the woman yelled again. So you're a superstar. I'm warning you. If you don't compensate us, I'll expose you to the media. How dare you not compensate us for our medical expenses when you caused a car accident? Can you let me call the insurance company? Even if you want me to compensate, You should at least let me withdraw the money, right? Xianxia was about to burst into tears from their unreasonable behavior. However, the family member said relentlessly, "What do you mean withdraw the money? You're just trying to run away with the money, aren't you? Don't think we don't know what you're thinking. Despicable. Shameless." Xianxia was so angry that tears welled up in her eyes. When a scholar met a soldier, there was really no way to reason with him. On the other hand, Lu Jinyu had just walked into the emergency room lobby when he saw many people crowding outside. A delicate-looking woman stood in the middle of the crowd. Her face was flushed red as she looked around helplessly. This hospital was under the control of the Jianghu financial group. Previously, due to poor management, this hospital was later acquired by the Xianxia Financial Group as a non-performing asset. Under the management of the Xianxia Financial Group, it had become one of the leading hospitals in the medical industry in the capital city. He had come to the hospital this time because the hospital needed to import a large number of medical equipment. At the same time, he wanted to inspect the situation. When he was about to leave, he realized that the emergency room was surrounded by curious passers-by. Hence, he walked over to take a look out of curiosity. After finding out that a woman had hit someone, she wanted to run away without compensation. However, he was laughing in his heart. In this era, which car on the road didn't have commercial insurance? In the capital city market, most of the insurance shares for cars were at least 1,000,000 yuan. If the driver didn't run away on the spot after hitting someone, it meant that the driver was responsible. After calling the police and arriving at the hospital, the rest was up to the insurance company. How could she run away? Hence, he pushed through the crowd, cleared his throat, and said, "Excuse me, may I interrupt? May I ask what's the situation?" As soon as he finished speaking, the male family member shouted unreasonably, "Who are you? It's not your place to interfere." However, Lu Jinyu smiled elegantly. In front of the unreasonable man, he was as polite as a gentleman. "I'm the person in charge of this hospital. With so many of you gathered here, it will affect the hospital negatively. I definitely have the responsibility and obligation to understand the situation." After a pause, he calmly asked the man, "Now, may I ask if I have the right to intervene in this matter?" Upon hearing that Lu Jinyu was the person in charge of the hospital, the man immediately straightened his attitude. However, Lu Jinyu caught the fleeting look of guilt on his face. There seemed to be something fishy about this. Logically speaking, since he was a weakling, he should be confident. What did he have to feel guilty about? So he asked, "What's going on?" His politeness and excellent character made the people around him quiet down in an instant. The family members were also strangely quiet. Lu Jinyu glanced at Xianxia and saw that she was standing on the spot with her arms crossed. It was obvious that she had just experienced an intense friction. His gaze landed on her arm, only to see that there were scratches on the back of her hand and wrist that were exposed to the air. Chapter 1747. Why did it seem like she was the one being bullied? Hence, he asked gently, "Madam, can you explain the situation to me?" Xianxia raised her head to look at him. She was subconsciously wary of him, but when she heard his gentle and courteous voice, she let her guard down and slowly said, "I bumped into someone and sent her to the hospital. I paid for her medical fees and did a full body checkup for her. The report said that she had a mild concussion and abrasions, but it wasn't particularly serious. So, I want to pay a few thousand yuan to settle the matter." A mild concussion sounds serious, but it's actually not a big deal. Generally speaking, even a slap can cause a concussion. It won't be much of a problem after some rest. As for the abrasions. At this point, Lu Jinyu smiled and said, "In the hospital, such injuries can be resolved with a maximum of 300 yuan. You're already being very responsible by paying a few thousand yuan." When Xianxia heard his words, it was as if she had met her savior. Her eyes instantly turned red with grievance. "But the victim's family came over and asked me to pay 50,000 yuan. I felt that their request was too ridiculous and suspected that they were blackmailing me, so I said to call the insurance company and get them to settle it." Lu Jinyu asked, "Have you called the police?" When they heard that they were going to call the police, the family members suddenly became flustered. They looked at each other nervously. They couldn't help but want to go forward and try to befriend Lu Jinyu. However, Lu Jinyu politely stopped them. "Speak one by one, okay? I asked you just now, but you didn't say anything. I don't want to hear it now." Xianxia sighed inwardly. This man looks gentle on the surface, but why is his style of speaking so domineering? As he spoke, he gave off the feeling that there was a knife hidden behind his smile and he was imposing without being angry. Lu Jinyu didn't know what she was thinking. He turned to look at her and said with a smile, "You haven't answered me yet." "I didn't call the police." "Silly girl, such a matter should be dealt with by the police immediately." Lu Jinyu asked again, "Then, have you called the insurance company?" Xianxia said cruelly, "It's been a few years since I got my driver's license, but it's only been a month or so since I started driving. Encountering such a situation, I'm indeed a little confused." Lu Jinyu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Don't you know that sometimes, when you're driving on the road, it's not the car that hits someone, but the person that hits the car?" "What do you mean?" "What a silly girl. Stand aside and don't say anything, okay?" Lu Jinyu raised an eyebrow. His elegant yet domineering way of speaking reminded her of Mu Yaja. He felt an inexplicable sense of security. She smiled gratefully, but didn't say anything else. Lu Jinyu walked up to a few family members. There were more than a dozen of them. Even if each of them said a word, it was enough to drown Xianxia. There was no room for her to speak. Chapter 1748. Upon hearing that they were going to call the police, the few of them panicked. Only the man pretended to be calm and said, "I don't think there's a need to call the police, right? What can the police say? She was the one who injured her. Since she wants to take responsibility, why don't we just pay the compensation? As long as the compensation is paid, we won't pursue any responsibility." Lu Jinyu curled his lips and smiled. "How much is the compensation? 50,000 yuan? Yes. Is 50,000 yuan a lot?" The man said, "She drives a Mercedes-Benz. Since she can afford to drive a Mercedes-Benz, 50,000 yuan shouldn't be a big deal to her. She won't lose anything by compensating her." Lu Jinyu nodded. Compensation is not a problem. Xianxia was a little surprised. She vaguely wondered if this man was helping her. Why did he say that compensation was not a problem? These people were obviously extorting her. He couldn't have believed their words, could he? When the family member heard this, he was about to nod in satisfaction when Lu Jinyu said, "But the amount you're asking for, I suspect that you're extorting her." Extorting her? Lu Jinyu's aura was so strong that it completely suppressed the scene. No one dared to interrupt him when he spoke. When the family member heard this, he was stunned and stared at him with wide eyes. "Don't you think it's too much to ask for 50,000 yuan as compensation for a soft tissue injury and a mild concussion? According to the law, this is already considered extortion. Furthermore, I suspect that you're fraudsters." The scene was very quiet, so the onlookers could hear Lu Jinyu's calm and rational offer. When they heard that these people were asking for 50,000 yuan as compensation, everyone came to a realization. After hearing Lu Jinyu's analysis, everyone started to discuss and wonder if these people were extorting her. Why would they have to pay 50,000 yuan for such a minor injury? Lu Jinyu continued, "However, I don't have any evidence at all." When the family member heard this, he immediately argued, "That's right. You have no evidence at all. What do you mean by extortion? We're all honest migrant workers. We wouldn't dare to do such a thing." "Let me finish." Lu Jinyu said, "There's no evidence, but there are surveillance cameras on the road now. We can call the police and get the surveillance footage. Then the truth will be revealed, won't it?" The family members thought to themselves, "We've met a smart man." Everyone looked at each other. For a moment, they were in a deadlock. Lu Jinyu picked up his cell phone and called the police. When those people heard that he was calling the police, they wanted to escape. However, they were stopped by the security guards who came to maintain order. The police soon arrived at the scene. Since Lu Jinyu had called the police station attached great importance to it. Hence, a police officer led the team. When he saw that it was Lu Jinyu, he said respectfully, "Mr. Lu. Nice to meet you. May I ask?" Lu Jinyu briefly explained the situation to them. The police quickly understood the situation. After a brief understanding of the situation, they brought these people back to the police station to record their statements. Xianxia was also informed to go to the police station. Before she left, she walked up to Lu Jinyu and thanked him sincerely. "Thank you. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't know what to do. Chapter 1749. Xianxia nodded. What's your name? To show my gratitude, I'll treat you to a cup of tea when we're free. Lu Jinyu agreed. Sure. How could he reject a beautiful woman's invitation? Moreover, she was such a beautiful woman. In his heart, he thought that maybe he could also be like his boss and have the hope of getting naked. Hence he said, my surname is Lu, and my name is Jinyu. You can call me Jinyu. Hello, Mr. Lu. Thank you so much for today. What about you? Lu Jinyu's gaze landed on her face. What's your name? Xianxia. Xianxia said generously. The next second, the smile on Lu Jinyu's face froze. Yun what? Xiaxia's expression froze for a moment. Yin. Sure. Xianxia. He couldn't help but be surprised. What a familiar name. That seemed to be the name of his boss's wife. Could it be such a coincidence? Lu Jinyu hesitated for a moment and decided to verify it. Do you know Wuxia? Xianxia was also stunned. Yes. Lu Jinyu was speechless. After holding it in for a long time, he suddenly said, Sister-in-law. Xianxia was confused by his sudden call of sister-in-law. She sized him up in confusion. What did you call me? Sister-in-law. Lu Jinyu smiled helplessly. It seemed that his dream of breaking through his singlehood was shattered. After so many turns, it turned out to be his sister-in-law. It seemed that the world was really small sometimes. Xianxia was still in a daze. She asked curiously, have we met somewhere before? Ha. Sister-in-law, why are you so cute? Lu Jinyu thought to himself. When he first saw this woman, his first impression was that she was a little clumsy and silly. She stood helplessly in the crowd like a punching bag who had been bullied. Her face was flushed red, and she was out of her wits. However, he didn't expect that after going around in circles, it was his sister-in-law. Let's go. Sister-in-law, let me treat you to a cup of tea. Lu Jinyu put his arm around her shoulders intimately. Facing the intimate touch of the opposite sex, she avoided him in disgust. You must have mistaken me for someone else. I'm not your sister-in-law. Wuxia is my elder brother. According to seniority, I should address you as my sister-in-law, Lu Jinyu said matter-of-factly. Wuxia is your big brother? Yes. What a coincidence. Xianxia looked a little confused. What coincidence? Haha. I'm a little surprised too. I didn't expect to meet you here. Thank you. But forget about the tea, I still have to go to the police station later. No need. If you go to the police station, it's just a procedure. I'll just let them file it. Lu Jinyu invited her into the car without any explanation. Along the way, Xianxia felt like she was in a fantasy. Why did she feel like a little white rabbit that was so easily abducted by a big bad wolf with bad intentions? When they reached the cafe, Xianxia was still a little skeptical. It was not until Lu Jinyu took out an engagement invitation from his briefcase that she believed him. She had personally written the invitation letter. After ordering a few cups of coffee, Lu Jinyu lost his cool and elegance. He couldn't hide the excitement on his face as he stared at Xianxia again and again. So, this was the legendary sister-in-law. She was very different from what he had imagined. Chapter 1750. If Xianxia knew what Lu Jinyu thought of her, she would probably not know whether to laugh or cry. Seeing that Lu Jinyu was silently sizing her up, Xianxia felt uncomfortable all over and smiled awkwardly. Mr. Lu, you seem to be looking at me. Mr. Lu? Lu Jinyu was once again amused by how she addressed him. He couldn't help but tease her. Sister-in-law, you don't have to be so formal. Just call me Jinyu. Jinyu? Yes. But... Xianxia hesitated and pursed her lips. Isn't this a little inappropriate? Why would it be inappropriate? Just call me that. Calling me Mr. Lu will inevitably make me feel distant. Lu Jinyu picked up his coffee cup and took a sip. His eyes were curved like two crescent moons, clear and charming. Unlike his previous cold and noble demeanor, the current him seemed very approachable. You and my boss have been brothers for many years. We can be considered comrades who have fought together. We've been friends for so many years, so don't be so formal. Xianxia didn't argue and smiled slightly. Lu Jinyu pursed his lips, but his smiling eyes were still sizing her up. Xianxia instinctively reached out and touched her cheek, thinking that there was something strange on her face. Seeing her actions, Lu Jinyu thought to himself that he had probably overstepped his boundaries by constantly sizing her up. Hence, he smiled politely and said, "Sister-in-law, Jinyu is being presumptuous. I shouldn't be staring at you like that. It's okay. However, I'm staring at you not because of anything else, but because I'm really curious about the charm of the woman that boss has taken a fancy to." Xiaxia's gaze shifted slightly. For a moment, she didn't understand what he meant. Lu Jinyu was afraid that her imagination would run wild, so he hurriedly explained, "Sister-in-law, don't misunderstand. Although it's a little presumptuous, I don't mean anything else. But, sister-in-law, do you know? You're boss's first and only woman. At first when I found out that boss was married, I was so shocked that my eyeballs almost popped out." Xianxia was amused by his funny words. She covered her mouth and laughed secretly. How can it be so exaggerated? How should I put it? In his impression, the boss was an ambitious person. He was cold-blooded and iron-fisted. His actions were swift and decisive. His abilities were extraordinary. Those who coveted his women would flock to him like a flock of ducks. I'm not exaggerating. The number of women who want to climb up the social ladder can line up from here to Paris. However, boss has always been cold and aloof. In terms of women, he has never touched anything. Lu Jinyu had always been curious. Did Wuxia not have any physical needs? In his memory, his impression of Wuxia was that of a workaholic. Work. Apart from work, he was busy. When the Jianghu financial group was first established, he spent half of the year flying around the world. He was so busy that he didn't have any free time. Apart from work, Wuxia's occasional hobbies were probably to play billiards, golf, or go to the fencing gym to pass the time. This routine and hobbies. No matter how he looked at it, he suspected that he was middle-aged. He was only 28 years old, but he was like an old cadre. He didn't have the vigor of a young man at all. Chapter 1751. Back then, Lu Jinyu had also developed some mischievous interests. He deliberately hid his purpose and took Wuxia to the bar to hunt for women. The problem was that when they arrived at the bar, Wuxia was like an ice block. He just sat in the private room and drank silently, as if he had nothing to do with it. He silently watched the men and women in the bar dance without restraint. His cold expression was a stark contrast to the drunken demeanor of the people in the bar. From the private room he was sitting in, it was almost as if he was in two different worlds from the dance floor. One side was in full swing, while the other side was cold. Lu Jinyu thought to himself, boss really doesn't know how to enjoy life. At such an occasion, he was not in a hurry to catch his prey. Instead, he was calm and composed. Like a profound veteran, he sat in the corner and casually tasted his wine. When it came to his career, he was very ambitious. Why did he seem so indifferent when it came to women? Men all had their biological needs. Could it be that boss had no feelings for women at all? But she had never seen him show any interest in any man before. Lu Jinyu even suspected that his boss was frigid. Of course, this was just a silent criticism in his heart. If Wuxia knew that he thought of him that way, who knew what he would do to him? Lu Jinyu had also found a few women with clean backgrounds for Wuxia. He sent them to his side, but they were all mercilessly chased away by him. After a futile effort, Lu Jinyu simply gave up. He thought that boss was probably devoted to his career and did not have the heart to care about other things. However, it was not until recently that he learned that Wuxia was married. This news was like a sudden clap of thunder that blasted him on the outside and made him tender on the inside. That was why Lu Jinyu was so curious about Xianxia. Sister-in-law, you're different from what I imagined. Lu Jinyu told Xianxia truthfully. Different? Xianxia was a little surprised. What's different? I thought that boss's woman would be the daughter of a rich family, noble and proud. But the feeling you give me is like what? Xianxia was a little curious. What did he think of her? Don't be angry if I tell you. I'm not angry. Lu Jinyu held back his laughter and said, like a little white rabbit. Little? Xianxia was at a loss for words. Lu Jinyu couldn't help but laugh at her adorable expression. Haha. That's the expression, it's so similar. Why do you say that I'm like a little white rabbit? Xianxia didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She looks very weak, like she would fall with a gust of wind. She looks very easy to bully. However, it's not strange that boss likes you. Sister-in-law gives people the feeling that she can easily arouse a man's desire to protect her. Lu Jinyu paused for a moment before asking, "You're about to hold your engagement ceremony. I'm sincerely happy for you and boss. I believe in boss foresight. Since he has chosen you, he will protect you forever. I wish you all happiness." Xianxia smiled. Thank you. The police station called to ask why Xianxia hadn't arrived at the police station. Lu Jinyu took the call and explained the situation. The police officer on the other end chuckled and said, "Hey, actually, it's not a big deal. Since she's Mr. Lu's friend, this matter is very easy to handle." Chapter 1752. Lu Jinyu took the call and explained the situation. The police officer on the other end chuckled and said, "Hey, actually, it's not a big deal. Since they're Mr. Lu's friends, this matter will be easy to handle." It turned out that those people were a gang of Pengxi scammers. They had been committing Pengxi for more than a dozen times. This gang was especially interesting. They didn't touch anything else but luxury cars. They didn't even look at cars that cost more than 100,000 yuan. They were certain that since they drove luxury cars, they would definitely be rich. When encountering such a matter, they definitely wouldn't want to waste any time. If they could solve it with money, they would try their best to keep the peace and not be calculative. Such rich people were especially easy to deal with. Tens of thousands of yuan were nothing to them. They had already committed more than a dozen crimes, and none of them had failed. Their usual routine was to stand at the intersection of the street and see a luxury car driving over. If the car was slow, they would pounce on it like a moth to a flame. Then, they would crash into the car and beg the car owner to send them to the hospital. Even if the car owner wanted to call the police to deal with it, when they saw the person lying on the ground and rolling around in pain, they were afraid that the loss would outweigh the gain if they delayed and caused a death. Hence, they rushed to the hospital. They called the gang to disguise themselves as family members, do a full body checkup, and ask for a sum of compensation to settle the matter privately. Most people couldn't be bothered to make a fuss and just settled the matter with money. Unfortunately, they met Lu Jinyu today, and he was in control of the situation. That was why they stumbled and fell into Lu Jinyu's hands. Hence, Xianxia was also very grateful to Lu Jinyu for helping her out. After hanging up the call, Lu Jinyu found that her phone screen was cracked, so he said that he would go to the mall to buy her a new phone. Xianxia hurriedly refused. However, Lu Jinyu was very insistent and said to her, "Since this happened on my territory, as the person in charge, I naturally have to take responsibility. Sister-in-law, this is what I should do. Don't stand on ceremony, okay?" Xianxia couldn't refuse, so she braced herself and nodded. Lu Jinyu drove her to the mall. As she was a public figure, it wasn't appropriate for her to appear in crowded places. Hence, he considerately asked her to wait in the car and hurriedly left. 10 minutes later, he came back with the latest model of Apple. He helped her send the information and changed the card. Xianxia smiled gratefully. "Thank you for your help today. Sister-in-law, if you continue to treat me like an outsider, I'm going to get angry with you." Lu Jinyu pretended to be angry. In the end, Lu Jinyu drove her home and got someone to drive her car back. Coincidentally, Wuxia returned home, and the three of them bumped into each other. When Wuxia got out of the car, he saw the car parked at the entrance of the villa. Lu Jinyu was holding Xianxia's hand and helping her out of the car. His gaze landed on Lu Jinyu's hand that was supporting Xianxia, and his eyes turned cold instantly. As soon as Lu Jinyu turned around, he saw Wuxia standing behind him. Wuxia's cold gaze landed on his hand, which was wrapped around Xianxia's shoulder. He felt as if he was being pricked by needles. He was so scared that he instinctively retracted his hand and smiled awkwardly. "B-boss. Damn it. Oh no. How could it be so unlucky?" Ah. Did boss misunderstand that he was deliberately taking advantage of sister-in-law? Chapter 1753. His gaze was like a tiger eyeing its prey, as if he was a lord whose territory had been invaded by other lions. His gaze gradually turned cold, as if he wanted to strangle someone into nothingness. But he was greatly wronged. The car he was driving was a George Patton, which was very tall. Hence, he was afraid that Xianxia would lose her balance after getting out of the car in high heels. Thus, he kindly helped to support her. If he was mistaken for taking advantage of her, he would not be able to clear his name even if he jumped into the Yellow River. When Xianxia saw Wuxia, she was stunned. "You're back, Chief." However, Lu Jinyu looked like he wanted to say something. He thought that he should at least explain something, but if he did, it would seem like he was trying to hide something. It was a little too obvious. He did not know whether to laugh or cry. Wuxia stared at him coldly. "Why are you here?" His tone was so cold that it made Lu Jinyu shiver. He said with a long face, "Something happened, so I sent sister-in-law back on the way." "What happened?" Xianxia immediately explained. Lu Jinyu looked as aggrieved as a deer, blinking innocently at him. After hearing the whole story, Wuxia's expression gradually softened. Seeing that his face had regained some warmth, Lu Jinyu heaved a sigh of relief. "Since you've sent her back, you should go back." Wuxia walked forward and pulled Xianxia into his arms. Looking at him, he mercilessly asked him to leave. Lu Jinyu felt as if a knife had been stabbed in his heart. "Chief, I just arrived, and you're chasing me away? Aren't you going to ask me to stay for a cup of tea? You can drink tea any time. We don't lack this bit of effort." Wuxia's tone was firm. When Lu Jinyu heard this, he could only give up. He nodded and smiled helplessly. "All right. I won't ask you to stay. I'll leave first." After that, he said goodbye to Xianxia and drove away. Wuxia brought Xianxia into the house. As soon as he stepped through the door, he asked in a deep voice, "Why didn't you call me immediately after something like this happened?" There was an inexplicable anger in his question. Even though she explained it casually, Wuxia's heart ached when he heard it. This stupid woman was so small. She was surrounded by so many people in such a situation. She was pointed at and bullied by so many people. She didn't know how helpless she was. She should have called him as soon as possible. As her man, the first person to stand up for her when she was in trouble wasn't him. This more or less made him a little angry. Xianxia saw that he seemed to be angry and knew that he was worried. She stuttered a little and replied, I might have been a little confused at the time." "Confused?" Wuxia didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he asked, "You're usually so sharp-tongued. Why? Were you confused when you were bullied by outsiders?" "There were so many of them. They surrounded me. At that time my mind was blank. Besides, how could I have thought of calling you for help at that time? If I didn't think of me when I was in trouble, who else could I think of?" Chapter 1754. It's all in the past. Don't be angry. I'm fine now. Xianxia paused and said, "Besides, you have a lot of work to do. What if you're busy when I call you? Won't that disturb you?" "Little idiot." Wuxia knocked on her head and enunciated each word clearly. "Remember this. No matter how important it is, it's not as important as you." Xianxia was stunned. Although his tone was stiff, it warmed her heart. He said, "No matter how important it is, it's not as important as me." It turned out that she was so important to this man. She was more important than his career and everything else in the world. Hearing him say this, her heart felt as sweet as honey. Xianxia pursed her lips and giggled. Wuxia saw that she was giggling like a cat that had stolen a fish. He couldn't help but reach out and pinch her cheeks. "What are you giggling about? Little idiot." Xianxia waved his hand away and said coquettishly, "All right. Don't be angry. I'll be more careful next time. I promise." "That's more like it," Wuxia said. "Just remember this in the future. However, even if you forgot to call me, you should have called the police immediately when there was a traffic accident. What were you thinking in that little head of yours?" "At that time, I saw someone fall onto the ground. It was so pitiful. I was afraid that someone would die, so I wanted to rush to the hospital." Wuxia was speechless. "Then, I wanted to call the police, but my cell phone was knocked to the ground by them and broke." Xianxia sighed as she said this. Wuxia was speechless. After a long silence he sighed. "Stupid woman. I think you're hopelessly stupid." Hey. No personal attacks. How am I stupid? If I were stupid, how could I have given birth to such a smart baby like you? You inherited my excellent IQ genes. As for your IQ, please refer to Xianxia. Wuxia calmly stated the truth. Xianxia. Was that really the case? Xianxia sniffed her nose as if she had suffered a blow. She was obviously provoked. Wuxia turned around and smiled. He suddenly raised his head and rubbed her hair. But this is also good. Okay. Xianxia was confused. What's good about it? Wuxia said gently. It's better if you're a little stupid. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Do you like how clumsy I am? Yes. She was even more surprised. Why? Because you'll need me more if you're a little stupid. Wuxia gently caressed her cheeks. The love and tenderness in his eyes warmed her heart even more. He liked the feeling of being relied on by her all the time. In the past, he always felt that it was better for women to be a little smarter. But that was until he met her. He liked how clumsy she was. When he looked at her, a strong desire to protect her grew from the bottom of his heart. He wanted to hold her in his palms, love her, and protect her. No one could covet her. It didn't matter if she was a little stupid. He would become her entire world. Even if this world was a dog-eat-dog world, he would use his own strength to stand at the top of the strong. He would build a city for her and protect her. Xianxia was touched and hugged his shoulders. Chapter 1755. So what? As Wuxia spoke, he inadvertently caught a glimpse of a scratch on her arm. His eyes darkened as he abruptly grabbed her hand and looked for her wound. He looked up and asked her, "What happened?" There were many scratches on her arm, wrist, and the back of her hand. Although the wounds weren't deep and were just scratches, it was obvious that someone had scratched them with their fingernails. Seeing this, his brows furrowed deeply. What exactly happened? How did you injure your hand? I was scratched by someone. Of course I can tell that it's a scratch. Wuxia sounded a little anxious. Who scratched you? It's those people. The police said that they were a group of scammers. When we were arguing at the hospital, they wouldn't let me go and scratched me. Wuxia's gaze instantly turned cold and his face darkened. Xianxia immediately said, "It's just a scratch. It's not serious." How is the scratch not serious? What if they have germs on them? How can it be that serious? Xianxia was frightened by him. You're too careless. Don't come into contact with others when you're outside. Some people have germs on them that can be infected through wounds. These words were indeed not to scare her. Wuxia held her hand and pulled her to the sofa. He took the first aid kit from the shelf and opened it. He dipped some cotton in the medicine and started to clean her wound. Xianxia found it funny and helpless at the same time. This man was making a mountain out of a molehill. It was just a scratch. Why did he have to go to such lengths to apply medicine? However, she was still quite touched by his attentiveness and consideration. She sat quietly on the sofa while he knelt on one knee in front of her and carefully used the medicine to clean her wound bit by bit. Xianxia was naturally very pleased to let him serve her so condescendingly. She lowered her head to look at him. From her angle, she could just catch a glimpse of his drooping eyelashes. They were thick, long, and mesmerizing. She couldn't help but reach out and catch his eyelashes. Wuxia looked up at her. What's wrong? Your eyelashes are really long. It's so beautiful. Xianxia was in a good mood. When she smiled, she was as innocent as a child. Wuxia couldn't help but be infected by her smile. The corners of his lips couldn't help but curve into a light arc, and his mood also improved a bit. Xianxia laughed at him. Eyelash fairy. Wuxia. Stupid woman. Other than these 3 words, he really didn't know what else to say. Furthermore, what did mascara spirit mean? Xianxia glanced at his face and knew that he definitely didn't know what the word meant. She kindly explained, "You don't understand the trend, right? Eyelash spirit means that the eyelashes have grown into a spirit." Wuxia. After applying the medicine for her, he reminded her, "Remember not to touch the wound. There are some areas that are bleeding." Xianxia glanced at him and smiled. "You're done applying the medicine?" She immediately assumed a dignified posture like an emperor. Then you may rise. Wuxia. Looking at his stern face, she really enjoyed the inexplicable sense of accomplishment when she teased him. Sometimes this man was also very cute. Chapter 1756. Good hubby. Wuxia raised his eyebrows. These 3 words were very pleasing to his ears. Originally, he was unhappy when she teased him, but because of these 3 intimate words, the corners of his lips uncontrollably curled up. He pulled her into his arms and continued the kiss that he didn't get to enjoy just now. With his lips on hers, he suddenly asked in a deep voice, "What kind of wedding gown do you like?" It was such a sudden question that she was a little stunned. Little fool. I asked you what kind of wedding gown you like. He thought that she didn't hear him clearly, so he controlled his temper and repeated it again. Wedding gown. Why are you suddenly asking about this? You're going to wear it when we get married. Wuxia looked at her as if she was a hopeless fool. Why? Don't you want to wear a wedding gown? Or do you not want to marry me? No. Xianxia blushed and refuted. I didn't mean that. I just think that your question is too sudden. Since I'm going to marry you, the wedding gown will naturally be indispensable. Your wedding gown needs to be custom-made in advance, so I wanted to ask you, what kind of wedding gown do you like? Wuxia explained. Is a custom-made one especially expensive? That's not something you should be thinking about. You just have to think about what kind of gown you like and what kind of gown looks good on you. After all, they were only going to get married once in a lifetime, so it had to be grand. He also hoped that on that day, she would wear the most beautiful wedding gown in the world and appear in front of him. Xianxia frowned. Your question is too sudden. I haven't thought about it yet. She suddenly looked up and asked, What about you? Do you have a wedding gown you like? Wuxia couldn't help but laugh. Stupid. I'm asking you. Why are you asking me instead? You're the one wearing the wedding gown, not me. Xianxia felt wronged. That's true, but your opinion is more important. Although I'm the one wearing the wedding dress, I hope you like it. Wuxia smiled softly and teased her. As long as you like it, I like it. I'm marrying you as a person, not a wedding dress. She didn't say anything, but her heart was filled with sweetness. Let me think about it. In fact, she used to have many beautiful dreams for weddings. Her biggest hope was to dress up grandly and wear a beautiful wedding dress to marry the man she loved. But when the day really came, she couldn't say for a moment what style she liked. She hadn't studied it at all. There are a few types of wedding dresses. One type is Chinese, such as the qipao or the hanfu. It combines many elements of classical culture. Some are more retro, and some are more modern. The other one is Western style, but there are many styles of Western-style wedding dresses. They are very complicated, and you will be dazzled by them. Xianxia was stunned by his words. You seem to know a lot about wedding dresses. Not really. But I went out of my way to find out more. Although he said that, she knew in her heart that he was paying special attention because of her. Xianxia's ears were a little red. Chapter 1757. There are Western-style wedding gowns. Some are retro and gorgeous, some are graceful and elegant, and some are noble and elegant. The custom-made wedding gowns will all be extremely luxurious. It all depends on what you choose. But as long as you wear it, no matter what style it is, I will like it. Women were naturally picky when it came to wedding gowns. No matter which woman it was, they all hoped to be the most beautiful bride in the world on their wedding day. Xianxia was no exception. But there were very few men who paid so much attention to the details of their wedding. There were also very few men who were so patient that they would go through every style of wedding gown. She remembered one of her colleagues. When she was nearing her wedding day, she excitedly took her fiancé to the bridal shop to choose a gown. However, she tried on one gown after another. She patiently tried on a few different styles of wedding gowns and asked her fiancé to make a judgment. But in return, her fiancé looked at her impatiently. He said, It's just a wedding. Is there a need to go through such a complicated process? The wedding gown is just a formality. It's worn during the wedding. You won't wear it again after wearing it once. Is there a need to choose so carefully? In front of so many people, her colleague felt so wrong that her eyes turned red. They parted on the spot on bad terms. If a custom-made wedding gown is expensive, there's actually no need to do so. I think I look good in anything. What's important is that you like it, understand? Wuxia emphasized this point. There's no need to save money for me. It's only once in a lifetime. How can I let you suffer? Xianxia smiled sweetly, but she felt as sweet as honey. She wanted to say, Wuxia, how can you dote on me so much? You're going to spoil me so much that I don't know the immensity of heaven and earth and forget myself. But when the words reached her mouth, she swallowed them back down. Wasn't it a blissful thing to be doted on by someone? Hence, she said, actually, I like quite a lot of styles. I've seen a wedding dress show before, and I really like a Western-style wedding dress that incorporates classic Chinese elements. The wedding dress she had her eyes on was not a traditional Chinese dress. It was an off-shoulder wedding dress with a long hemline that reached the ground, like a charming lily in full bloom. The neckline and cuffs were designed with Chinese Sioux embroidery. It had both the elegance and romance of French and the unique charm and elegance of the East. It was very beautiful. Since you have an idea, that's good. When the time comes, I'll contact a few wedding dress designers for you. You can tell them your idea and see how they design it. After the design is done, you only need to be responsible for choosing. They were going to custom make a wedding dress for her. Xianxia was so touched that she didn't know what to do. She just nodded with a silly smile. All right. At night, she sorted out the invitations that she had yet to send out. Her gaze suddenly fell on one of the more exquisite invitations. On the name of the guest, she neatly filled in the 2 words, Xianxia. Would he come to her engagement party? She really wanted to receive his blessings. At the thought of this, Xianxia picked up her cell phone and called Xianxia. The call went through very quickly. Xiaojia, where are you? Sis, what's the matter? Xianxia said, I have something for you. There was a moment of silence on the other end. Then, a cold voice came through. Is it an invitation? Yes, it is. Chapter 1758. Upon hearing this, Xianxia couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. She had thought that this was an excuse for him not to attend the engagement ceremony. Hence, the loneliness in her heart was reflected in her tone of voice. Xiaojia, are you still unwilling to attend my engagement ceremony? After 15 years of separation, she cherished the sibling relationship that she had lost and regained. But at the same time, she also hoped that her happiness would be blessed by the person closest to her in the world. Xianxia was as important to her as Little Munchkin. Sis, I have something urgent to attend to in America. I just got off the plane and am not in the country. After a pause, Xianxia continued, as for the engagement ceremony, can you give me some time to consider it? Xianxia sounded a little helpless on the other end of the line. Xianxia was stunned for a moment. Then, she smiled a little dejectedly. Xiaojia, I won't force you or make things difficult for you. Whether you come or not, I will reserve a place for you. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. He didn't say a word, and she didn't know what he was thinking. Suddenly, Xianxia said, Okay, got it. After hanging up the phone, Xianxia sighed. Even though Xianxia had promised her well, she didn't know if he would come on that day. Now that he was overseas, she was afraid that this meticulously prepared invitation wouldn't reach him. Xianxia pursed her lips. She opened the drawer and put the invitation inside. The next day, Wuxia sent someone to send Xianxia to the set and then went to the office. When Xianxia returned from the set, the chauffeur sent by Wuxia sent her to the bridal gown shop. Lover. A professional custom-made gown. Even though it was just an engagement ceremony and there was no need to wear a wedding gown, this gown was still necessary. Wuxia had left the meeting early and was waiting for her in the shop. He had considered things more thoroughly, so he had arranged things very carefully. As soon as Xianxia stepped into the store, she was invited into the VIP room by the manager of the dress hall. First she was measured. After taking the measurements, the manager was surprised and exclaimed, Miss Yun, your figure is the golden ratio. A figure like yours is a classic clothes hanger. You can do any style of gown. For a moment, she could not tell if he meant what he said or if he was just being polite, so she replied politely, Hee hee. You flatter me. I'm not flattering you. I'm speaking from the bottom of my heart. When we make custom-made gowns, we pay the most attention to the proportion of the body. The more perfect a person's figure was, the better they looked in clothes. The fewer restrictions there are. At the side, a few shop assistants also surrounded her and took some measurements for her. For example, the size of the wrist, the size of the shoulder, the size of the shoulder. Lover was a famous custom-made gown shop in the capital. Many celebrities and socialites chose their gowns from this shop. The reason why they were so famous in the industry was because of 3 words: exquisite, exquisite, and exclusive. Every gown was handmade and the size and size were exactly the same. Even the slightest mistake of 0.1 millimeters was not allowed to happen. Hence, the gowns made by this shop never failed to fit. They were all custom-made. Chapter 1759. There was only one ready-made dress per design. Once the customer picked the dress, it would no longer be sold. Among the upper-class socialites, including the A-list celebrities in the entertainment industry, no matter if they were attending important business events or public events, walking the red carpet, or filming a blockbuster, no one would be indifferent to wearing the same dress as another person. It would be quite embarrassing. It was not scary to wear the same dress, but it would be embarrassing to see who was uglier. In order to avoid such embarrassment, everyone would want to wear the only custom-made dress. Therefore, it could be said that every dress from Lover was custom-made and one of a kind in the world. Of course, the price of the gowns in this shop was naturally not cheap. After taking measurements, Xianxia walked out of the shop. She saw Wuxia sitting on the sofa and flipping through the album. She walked over and sat beside him to take a look. She saw that he was holding the works of Lover's top designers. Some of them were concept drawings, while others were samples that had already been made. Of course, the so-called album was different from the pictures that could be found on the internet. The concept drawings were all meticulously designed, polished, harmonized, and rendered. Every detail was vividly displayed. As for the final product, every detail, including the design of the cuffs, collar, and waist, was accurately photographed in high definition. It was for the customers to read carefully. As for the fabric, there were some samples at the end of the album so that the customers could feel the texture with their own hands and choose the material that they liked. There was a thick stack of album in front of Wuxia. It was very thick and very heavy. Xianxia held the album in her hands. It was so heavy that she frowned. "Did you pick anything?" She looked up and asked him as she flipped through the album. Wuxia frowned and shook his head. He was picky and paid attention to details. Originally, he did not want to participate in the process of choosing the dress. However, she said that she hoped that he would like the dress that she wore. Since that was the case, he would personally participate in the process of choosing the dress. Since he entered the shop, he had already flipped through 3 albums. However, there were only a few designs that he liked, but he was not satisfied with any of them. Among the few models that he liked, there were also many details that he was not satisfied with. However, they weren't in a hurry. If there wasn't anything they were satisfied with, they could continue to choose. There had to be one that both of them liked. If there really wasn't any, it wouldn't be a problem to get the designer to rush out the design. After Xianxia sat down, the manager led a few designers over. Xianxia was not a professional when it came to choosing a wedding dress, so the manager specially brought a few designers to explain to her. Formal attire might seem simple, but when it was worn on the body, the first thing that was important was its beauty, the second was its material, and the third was its comfort. Some low-quality gowns did not fit well. Some people with sensitive skin would have an allergic reaction when they touched some low-quality fabric. A few designers flipped through the album and showed it to her and Wuxia as they explained it in detail. At first, Xianxia only understood half of it, but later on, she gradually understood some of the details. Finally, after some discussion, the two of them decided on a set of formal attire. Chapter 1760. A red Chinese-style gown was more festive. On this point, the two of them were surprisingly in agreement. However, this gown was not a classic one. It was stylish and beautiful. Xianxia took a liking to it at first glance. Wuxia gave the manager a deadline. As the date of the engagement was approaching, the gown had to be made as soon as possible. The manager repeatedly promised that the gown would be delivered before the engagement under the condition that the quality and quantity of the gown were guaranteed. Xianxia sent out the last few invitations. Of course, Xianghu, Qingmiao, and Xiangyu also received an invitation. The invitations were exquisitely made, and each one was handwritten by Xianxia. The date and place of the engagement were written in it. It also stated that 2 nights before the engagement, Wuxia would use his private jet to bring the grooms and bride's invited guests to the island. The moment Yun Qingmiao received the invitation and saw the envelope, she was dumbfounded. Mom! Who exactly is Yun Shishir's man? He actually has his own private jet. Yun Qinli was also in disbelief. Gosh! I used to think that Yun Shishir's man could only be considered as Yin Fu, but now it seems that his identity is definitely not ordinary. He actually has his own private jet. How rich must he be to own such a thing? In their eyes, only the super-rich could afford a private jet. What they did not know was that Wuxia had a total of 5 private jets under his name. 2 of them were especially luxurious VIP jets, which were used to pick up important VIPs during business negotiations. You are one of the private jets that will be used for the engagement. Yun Qingmiao was so jealous that she could die. A few days ago, she had just seen the trailer for the movie, The Green Apple, on TV. At first, when she saw the beautifully edited promotional video on TV, she felt that it looked familiar. At first, she thought that it was just a coincidence. Later, the movie channel specially broadcasted the special feature and invited the director and the various main cast members to do an exclusive interview. They also edited some of the movie's highlights. When Yun Shishir appeared on the screen, her name was clearly written at the bottom of the screen. Only then did Yun Qingmiao believe that her distant cousin was actually a superstar. Yun Qingmiao was not a fan of celebrities, but Yun Qinli especially liked to watch idol dramas. Naturally, like many young girls, she especially admired Gu Xingxia. When she saw Yun Shishir and Gu Xingxia smiling as they sat together for an interview, she went into a frenzy. Yun Shishir was actually a superstar. Moreover, she and Gu Xingxia had starred in a teen movie. What's more, the main cast of this movie was a gold medal team. Not only that, when she searched for Yun Shishir's name, a few topics popped up. Surprisingly, one of them was a popular reality TV show, The Love Diary. She stayed up all night and watched all 3 episodes of the show. For 3 whole days, she could not sleep in peace. She was excited. She was excited. She was excited because she did not expect that her beloved idol would be so close to her one day. Chapter 1761. Yun Qinli especially wanted Gu Xingxia's autograph. If there was a chance, she could use Yun Shishir to get to know Gu Xingxia in person. This was something she dared not even dream of. If she could use Yun Shishir to enter the entertainment industry, would she not be able to get closer to her idol? Yun Qinli was so delusional that she did not even have the mood to look for a job. All she wanted was to find an opportunity to enter the entertainment industry. Yun Qingmiao, on the other hand, did not chase after celebrities, but unlike her sister, she harbored another thought in her heart. It turned out that Yun Shishir's fiancé was so rich. Not only was he handsome and tall, but his family background was also so superior. How exactly did Yun Shishir manage to hook up with such a perfect man? If she had such a boyfriend, she would wake up laughing even in her dreams. Jianghu, on the other hand, did not pay attention to these. The only thing she was concerned about was that since Yun Shishir was a celebrity and had such a rich fiancé, her family background should be extremely superior. She was focused on scheming. If she could hook up with Yun Shishir's family, given her relationship with Yun Shishir, they could be considered distant cousins. With such a rich cousin, she would not have to worry about glory and wealth for the rest of her life. In short, the 3 mother and daughter each had their own ulterior motives and different ambitions. Yun Qinli gave Yun Shishir a call and indirectly asked her how she could enter the entertainment industry and become a celebrity like her. How could Yun Shishir not understand the hidden meaning in her words? Alas, she was too busy preparing for the engagement, so she did not have the time to care about her. She gave a perfunctory reply and did not say much more. Yun Qinli was not discouraged, though. She thought to herself that she would discuss this matter with her after the engagement ceremony. She wanted to see if she could use her connections to open a back door for her to sneak into the production team and play a role. Who knew? She might become famous overnight. There was no telling. She might even become more famous than Yun Shishir. Yun Qinli was so delusional that she could not settle down for a few days. The engagement ceremony was held on an island because Wuxia had considered many aspects before making this decision. Firstly, there was a castle on the island. After fetching the family and friends, the 2-day and 2-night celebration banquet would be relatively convenient, and there would be a private jet to shuttle them back and forth. More importantly, his wife had always dreamed of having a beach wedding. She had never mentioned these dreams but had written them down in her diary. He took a glance at it and memorized it in his heart. Although it was just an engagement ceremony, it was still a dream come true. He hoped that the engagement ceremony would be grand, but at the same time, it had a confidential atmosphere. There weren't many guests, but they were all important guests with deep connections. If they held an engagement ceremony on an island, not only would they not be disturbed, they could also ensure the safety of these guests. One had to know that many of the invitees to the engagement banquet were international politicians, even aristocrats and celebrities. They were the leaders of various countries. In 2 weeks' time, the arrangements on the island were completed. Wuxia had invested a lot of manpower and energy in this aspect. Chapter 1762. His personality dictated that as long as he was involved in something, he would naturally strive for perfection. He did not like things with flaws, not to mention this was such an important moment in his life. He would not allow any mistakes in any part of the process. On the day of the wedding, he even sent out strict security. Even though it was on an island, he had to be alert to any possibility of an emergency. The venue was heavily guarded. Without an invitation, no one could enter. 2 nights before the engagement ceremony, Xianxia was suddenly so nervous that she could not sleep well. Wuxia had already flown to the island. The next day, he would send out a private jet to pick up all the guests. As for her, as the bride-to-be, another private jet would be sent to pick her up. She could not help but be curious and asked why. Wuxia mysteriously said, "You are my fiancé. Of course you have to maintain a sense of mystery." Xianxia was amused by him and did not know whether to laugh or cry. Lying on the bed, she tossed and turned restlessly. Hugging the pillow, she recalled everything that had happened between her and Wuxia ever since they met. Every scene flooded into her mind, but it gave her the illusion that it was a lifetime ago. Fate was unpredictable. Perhaps she was born lucky to have met him and used up all her life's luck. When they first met, he was her employer. What about her? She was merely his surrogate mother. When they first met, they were still strangers. Then, she gave herself to him without any reservations. Out of helplessness, that was also the lowest point of her life. However, at that time, she did not expect that the man she was so afraid of that night would actually be her husband in the future. Fate was something that could not be explained clearly. However, fate was like this. If there was a slight mistake at every step, they could miss each other. Xianxia was sincerely grateful that they were able to come this far. The engagement ceremony was imminent. Yu and Xianxia were also excited. Xianxia complained that he wanted to be the microphone, but Yu rejected him. "Idiot! It's an engagement party, not a wedding. There's no need for a flower girl. Mommy is not wearing a wedding gown." When Xianxia heard this, he started chattering again. "Ah! I thought it was a wedding. When is Mommy and Daddy's wedding?" Xianxia smiled. "I haven't decided on a date yet." "Why, Xianxia, are you that impatient?" Xianxia said matter-of-factly. "Of course. All I want is to see the day Mommy marries Daddy." "Why?" "Because on that day, Mommy will definitely be very happy. I want Mommy to be happy." Xianxia's words made Xianxia's heart feel sweet again. Yu said coldly from the side, "This bewitching potion is really good. Humph. Even if Mommy gets married, Mommy will still love me the most. You're not allowed to steal my Mommy." Xianxia pouted and said, "What do you mean I can't snatch your Mommy away from you? Mommy is also mine. It's also mine." The 2 little guys did not agree and started to pinch each other again. Each of them hugged one of Xianxia's arms and acted coquettishly. Xianxia did not know what to do, but she did not know whether to laugh or cry. With 2 children at home, she really could not have a moment of peace. The next day, Wuxia's private jet arrived as scheduled. Xianxia and the 2 little guys boarded the same jet. The other jet was specially used to pick up the guests from both parties. There was something that had to be mentioned. Chapter 1763. His consideration was that the guests invited by the man were all wealthy and respectable. He was afraid that the mother-daughter trio would say something inappropriate regardless of the occasion, which would embarrass everyone in public and embarrass them. He did not want to ruin Xianxia's important moment at such an important occasion. However, he still invited them. If he did not invite them, it would not be right. If word got out, people would gossip. In the end, it was Wuxia who spoke. It was not a problem to invite them. At most, they would be separated from some important guests in 2 cabins. During the engagement party, they would be arranged as far away as possible. Wuxia also knew that Xianxia and her daughter were not good people. They did not know how to control their words. But if he did not invite them, it would not be right. Hence he made such arrangements. Xianxia invited a few friends. Among them, those who were on good terms with her colleagues were invited. Xiaoxue, who was her best friend and future bridesmaid, was also invited. As for Jianghu, she was the only one who was invited among all her classmates. The rest of them were all close friends of his. When it was time to board the plane, Xiaoxue was used to such situations, so she remained calm. Jianghu, on the other hand, was completely shocked. When she was traveling, she had also taken a plane, but she had never been on such a luxurious plane. The solid wood seats, the luxurious decor, and the luxurious furnishings in the cabin all showed the style of a noble. She even dared not sit down. More importantly, the guests invited by the groom were all dignified. Some of them had even been seen on important international news. They seemed to be very influential. There were bodyguards wearing sunglasses 3 meters away from them. They did not allow outsiders to get close. What was even more surprising was that a few politicians from a certain country were also invited. A few international politicians and members of a certain country's royal family, as well as the Prime Minister and President of Country X, were allocated to the VIP cabin. The important politicians and celebrities sat in a suite. Xianxia's guests sat in the same cabin as some business celebrities. Even so, Jianghu still felt quite pressured. Most of the guests who were sitting in the same cabin were people with great backgrounds, and their names could be called out. Even if he hadn't appeared on TV, there were special introductions in some financial newspapers. One of them seemed to be the CEO of a large corporation. All the famous people on the Forbes list were among them. Sitting among them, she could not help but feel the aura of these big shots in the business world. It was as if Mount Tai was pressing down on her. It was so oppressive that she could not breathe. Even if she was just casually drinking some tea, she had to pretend to be a lady in order to feel that she could adapt to such a scene. But at the same time, he felt that she was imitating others and making a fool of herself. It was neither fish nor fowl. In short, no matter what she did, she felt out of place with the nobles of this class. The huge difference between them made her unable to adapt quickly. When a person was in a high position, their temperament would be completely different from ordinary people. Moreover, these big shots at the pinnacle all had extraordinary backgrounds and were especially noble. Jianghu resisted the urge to scream and sat in the same place, trembling with fear. She held Xiaoxue's hand tightly. She had not seen Xiaoxue for a long time. The reason she was invited this time was because they were classmates. After all, they had been classmates for 4 years. Jianghu had been good to Xianxia, and Xianxia was grateful to her. Therefore, she made an exception and invited her from among her classmates. Chapter 1764. Due to that class reunion, everyone had parted on bad terms. She thought that her relationship with Xianxia would end just like that. When Jianghu received her invitation, she was more touched than surprised. She then seriously prepared a 4-digit red packet. This was already considered a decent amount among the commoners. However, compared to Wuxia's guests, it was not even worth a mention. To put it bluntly, a private jet flight to a private island for a vacation was not even worth this bit of money. She could not help feeling guilty at first, but when Xiaoxue found out about it, she said, "It's fine as long as you have the intention. Will Xianxia care about this bit of money?" Only then did she feel more at ease. Of course, she still knew her limits and knew to save some face for Xianxia. Even though she was shocked, she still pretended to be calm in the face of such an occasion. Yunyeqing and Yunyeho were dressed especially well for the engagement ceremony. They had prepared 2 suits, but when they boarded the plane and saw the various celebrities in the cabin, they could not help but feel a little oppressed. This feeling was indescribable. It could only be said that their status was still in a different world from Wuxia's social circle. Because of this, he could not help but feel worried for Xianxia. Since ancient times, marriage was about matching the social status of the 2 families. Of course, it did not mean that the 2 families had to be of the same status, but at the very least, it could not be so different. One was a commoner while the other was from the upper class. The difference between them could not be summed up in a few words. He was afraid that Xianxia would inevitably suffer after marrying into the Mu family. Most of the rich and powerful would not fancy Xianxia's family background. This was what he was most worried about. In the end, due to his nervousness, Yunyeqing had no choice but to bring his younger brother to the same cabin as Xiangyu and her daughter. The moment Xiangyu saw Yunyeqing, she hurriedly pulled him to the side and said, "Brother Cheng, you're here. You're being a little unkind in this matter. How could your daughter be so capable to hook you up with such a rich husband? You've been hiding it from us all this time." Yunyeqing was stunned. Xiangyu couldn't help but ask, "What is the background of Xiaxia's fiancé? From the looks of it, they've even sent out a private jet. You must have a lot of money, right?" Yunyeqing knitted his brows in disgust at her question. "I don't care about Xiaxia's fiancé's family background. I only care about whether he loves Xiaxia, whether he dotes on Xiaxia, and whether he treats Xiaxia well. I don't care about anything else." "How can this be?" But Xiangyu didn't agree. "He is your son-in-law. You don't even know him well. Why do you care about him?" Then she guessed mysteriously, "I think his background is not simple. How could he afford such a luxurious private jet if he wasn't a billionaire? Brother Cheng, if you ask me, Xiaxia is really not bad at all. With her finding such a rich husband for you, you won't have to worry about your wealth in the future." Chapter 1765. Yunyeqing gave her a lukewarm smile and glanced at her expressionlessly. "I don't care about these things. Xiaxia being able to find a man who loves her and their children being able to spend the rest of their lives together is the most important thing. Everything else, be it rich or poor, is secondary." "Sigh. Look at you. You have the life of luxury, so why are you so unappreciative?" She was exasperated at his failure to live up to her expectations. Yun Qingmiao, who was curious, also came forward and inquired, "Uncle, Xiaxia is really lucky. She can find such a handsome and rich husband." One can't be too worldly when looking at things and people. When two people are together, the most important thing is their feelings. Other material conditions are not important at all. Yunyeqing did not take this matter seriously. He had never thought of the glory and wealth he could enjoy in the future if Xiaxia and Mu Yaja were together. To put it bluntly, if Xiaxia led a good life, he was willing to work harder for the rest of his life. That was what he really thought, and that was what he did. After returning to the capital, he immediately found a job to take care of Yunyeho while working. While he still had some stamina, he could work a job and earn some money to reduce her burden. Alas, neither Xiangyu nor Yun Qingmiao thought the same. To them, his words sounded a little pompous and pompous. Yun Qingmiao smiled and said, "Uncle, what are you saying? If her fiancé isn't rich, will Xiaxia still fancy him? Isn't she with him so that she can have a better life in the future? If she marries such a rich man, she can live a comfortable and carefree life as a rich madam for the rest of her life. She doesn't have to work or earn money as she has a husband to support her. As long as she works hard to give birth to his children, her life in the future will be very comfortable." Xiangyu also sighed at the side. That's right. Xiaxia's good fortune was not something that could be obtained through envy. If possible, let Qingmiao and Qinli visit Xiaxia and learn from her. In the future, they can also find me 2 rich husbands. That would be great. At this point, Yunyeqing did not want to talk to them anymore. Some things can't be asked for. After a pause, he reminded them again, "Xiangyu, Qingmiao, Qinli, there are a lot of influential people at this engagement ceremony. When the time comes, remember not to speak carelessly. Be careful with your words and actions, and at least know your limits when you speak." Hearing this, Xiangyu's expression changed, and displeasure appeared in her eyes. "Ah, Brother Cheng, what are you talking about? Xiaxia just got engaged, and you're already setting up the rules. What, are you afraid that the 3 of us will embarrass Xiaxia? Don't you think it's inappropriate to say that?" Yunyeqing thought in dissatisfaction. It's precisely because the 3 of them are unreliable in their words and actions. Otherwise, why would I give them such advice? Xiangyu only took it that he was being arrogant in front of them. His daughter had married into a rich family, yet he was starting to despise them for being poor and lacking in class. It was just marrying into a rich family. Did he have to be so lofty in his words? His pretense was quite impressive. Wasn't he just afraid that they would embarrass themselves in public? Did he have to speak like this? Chapter 1766. Sigh. I'm just worried. To be honest, most of the guests invited by the groom this time are people of status. I don't dare to speak carelessly for fear of being laughed at. So just keep your mouth shut when the time comes. Unwillingly, Xianxia agreed. However, she had another thought in mind. Once Yun Yeqing was gone, she immediately whispered to Yun Qingmiao, "Did you hear that? All the guests this time are people of status. Aren't you going to let me seize this opportunity?" Although Yun Qingmiao pretended to be calm on the surface, she could not hide the excitement in her heart. She held her mother's hand tightly, clearly at a loss for what to do. "Mom, in that case, are all the people who came to the wedding banquet this time influential people?" Her mother snorted. "What do you think? Most of them are either rich or powerful. Didn't you hear what your uncle said earlier? He said that many of the guests at this engagement party are people of status and influence. Hee. Xirshi's fiancé is so influential that he even owns several private jets. How can the guests he invited be third-rate people?" Yun Qingmiao was elated to hear that, but she was full of expectations for the upcoming engagement party. She longed to meet a person of status and power like Wuxia. He was tall, handsome, and powerful. Most importantly, he seemed to have inexhaustible wealth. Perhaps it was because he was used to living a hard life. He had never enjoyed a good life since he was young. When he was young, he went to work in the factory. In the electronics factory, day after day, year after year, he worked 12 hours a day and only had 2 days of rest a month. Yet, he could only earn a salary of a little more than 3,000 yuan. At first, she was quite satisfied with this salary. 3,000 yuan was considered a good income in the countryside. However, there was no harm in comparison. When she followed her mother into this bustling metropolis, she saw real estate with an average price of tens of thousands, luxury cars that easily cost hundreds of thousands, mobile phones that cost a few thousand, luxury goods that cost tens of thousands, bags, lipsticks, cosmetics. To her, almost everything was full of impactful temptation. She suddenly felt that a monthly salary of 3,000 yuan was nothing. Living in such a huge international city, even if it was only a few tens of thousands of yuan, it might be difficult to make ends meet in a month. But if she could marry a rich husband, that would be a different story. She could also afford to drive a luxury car, live in a villa, buy Hermes bags that cost hundreds of thousands, and buy high-end cosmetics. She could walk through the bustling department stores and buy whatever she liked without hesitation. She yearned for such a carefree life. Therefore, she was extremely envious of Yun Xirshe. However, it was important to know one's own limitations. Yun Qingmiao was well aware that her looks could not compare to Yun Xirshe's. Perhaps, it was hard to meet a man as noble as Wuxia, but she did not have to be too handsome or tall. As long as he had money, power, and could satisfy her material needs, that was enough. Speaking of which, this was all thanks to Yun Xirshe. If she had not been invited to her engagement party, she might not have had such an occasion and opportunity to try her luck. Chapter 1767. After she arrived in the capital, she caught up with the latest trends. She used communication devices and even learned how to use Weibo. She followed Gu Xingzi's account on Weibo and saw a lot of intimate interactions between him and Yun Xirshe. She was very excited. It seemed that the two of them had a good relationship. While she was jealous, she was also looking forward to seeing if Gu Xingzi would attend the engagement party. If he did, she wanted to sit next to him. Even if she could only look at him from a close distance, she would be very satisfied. Of course, these were just wishful thinking. If he did not show up, then she would only be disappointed. However, Yun Qinli was destined to be disappointed this time. Yun Xirshe did not invite Gu Xingzi. Actually, she had wanted to invite Gu Xingzi, but she gave up the idea after considering Wuxia's feelings. If he didn't like someone, she would consider his feelings and keep a little distance. Yun Xirshe's plane arrived at the island first. After the plane landed on the tarmac, bodyguards escorted her all the way to the castle. However, the interesting thing was that after she got into the car, the bodyguard covered her eyes. While she was feeling uneasy and suspicious, the bodyguard said that it was the boss's idea. The boss was probably referring to Wuxia. What was this guy trying to do by pretending to be mysterious? Yun Xirshe was puzzled, but she did not say anything and allowed them to cover her eyes. When she got out of the car, she was carefully led into the castle. Just as she entered the castle, The crisp sound of high heels hitting the marble floor reminded her of where she was. "Can I take it off now?" she asked softly. She could not see anything in front of her, and this made her feel very uneasy. The cold and respectful voice beside her said, "Sorry, please wait for a moment. Follow me upstairs." Suddenly, he reminded her, "Be careful of the stairs." With the help of the bodyguards, she was led all the way to the 4th floor. In a daze, she did not know how many flights of stairs she had taken. Finally, she stopped in front of a door. After the bodyguard sent her into the room, he quietly retreated, closed the door, and left. Xianxia waved her hands in the air for a long time before she took off the blindfold in a daze. However, when she opened her eyes, she was instantly mesmerized by the luxurious and elegant decor in front of her. Inside the huge room, the ceiling was more than 5 meters high. As far as the eye could see, the richly ornamented beams and painted rafters were luxurious and elegant. The unique retro and luxurious style of European medieval royalty was fully reflected. There were bright floor-to-ceiling windows and an arched door decorated with holy flowers. Past the arched door was the bedroom. There was a princess bed that was 2 meters wide and 3 meters long. The pink curtains were gently swaying, half closed. Above her head, there was a complicated and beautiful crystal chandelier, elegant and beautiful paintings, an exquisite dressing table, and a high-quality solid wood wardrobe, all of which were luxurious. Everything in front of him was something that could only be seen in movies. But now, it was happening right before his eyes. She still remembered a fairy tale movie she had watched when she was young. The female lead was a royal princess who lived carefree in a dreamy castle manor. Every day, she would wake up in a luxurious princess room like the one in front of her. This was the princess room of her dreams. This was the real princess room. Chapter 1768. Xianxia was pleasantly surprised as she walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. Through the clear window, she could see the vast blue ocean, the spotlessly white beach and the seagulls circling around in the air. The tender green lawn had already been decorated. From this position, she could see the back garden of the castle. The fresh flowers were in full bloom and it was a beautiful sight to behold. This wasn't the first time she had come to this castle, but the scenery that she saw the previous time was completely different from this time. It looked like a certain man had put in a lot of effort to redecorate the castle according to her dreams. It was too beautiful. It was really too beautiful. If she could, she really wanted to live here for the rest of her life. How blissful would that be? She loved the boundless blue ocean and spotlessly white beach the most. This was the fairy tale wonderland of her dreams. Xianxia clutched her chest as her heart was beating like thunder. Everything in front of her gave her a huge surprise. A pair of arms suddenly hugged her from behind. Following that, she was pulled into an embrace from behind by a strong arm. The man's unique magnetic voice was close to her ear as it sounded, "Do you like it?" Xianxia raised her head abruptly and met with Wuxia's deep and charming eyes. She smiled, but it looked like she was crying yet not laughing. "I like it. I like it so much." Xianxia turned her head back to look out of the window, but she still couldn't regain her senses. "Did you prepare these for me?" She found it hard to believe and felt as if she was in a dream. Wuxia, however, rubbed her nose affectionately. "Who else could it be?" "You." Xianxia was touched by his meticulousness once again. This man. How could he be so meticulous? Also, was he a roundworm in her stomach? Why was it that he always seemed to be able to guess what she was thinking? How did he do it? "It's good that you like it." Wuxia saw the corners of her lips curled upwards and he couldn't help but reveal a gratified smile. Earlier on, he was even a little nervous. He, who had always been the one to decide life and death in the midst of bloody storms, was actually a little nervous at this moment. He was secretly angry at himself, but at the same time, he was careful, afraid that she would not like it at all. Now, seeing the yearning in her eyes that she didn't hide at all, his heart finally calmed down. Xianxia was about to say something when someone knocked on the door. Wuxia said, "Come in." The door was opened from the outside and several elegantly dressed designers walked in with a set of gowns. "Chairman Mu, the gown is here. Would you like Miss Yun to try it on?" That person asked. Wuxia looked at her. "Give it a try?" "Yes." "Miss Yun, please try it on. If there's anything you're not satisfied with, we'll immediately send someone to rectify it overnight." Xianxia nodded and cooperated. "Okay." Several designers sent Xianxia into the cloakroom, drew the curtains, and tried on the clothes for her. Wuxia was waiting on the sofa outside. After changing into the gown, it took a long time for styling. A beautiful gown naturally had to be matched with beautiful makeup to look even more outstanding. However, he also waited patiently. Although the time spent waiting was long, it was also comfortable. He even had a bit of anticipation in his heart. Chapter 1769. At this moment, it was already dusk. Beautiful rays of sunlight shone through the floor-to-ceiling windows and fell on her body. Her long gown seemed to be plated with a faint layer of gold, emitting a holy light, exquisite and beautiful. This gown was a combination of Chinese and Western fashion elements. The skirt was a floor-to-ceiling long dress with a long hemline. The collar and sleeves were the most beautiful elements of Han Chinese clothing, especially the Su embroidery. It was classical and elegant, adding a thick stroke of color to this gown. The gown used a gradual change of color. From the collar to the hemline, it went from light to dark. At first glance, it was like a fairy condensed from roses, magnificent and noble. The neckline was designed with an off-shoulder design and exquisite Suzhou embroidery. Every stitch was flawless, especially the embroidery on the neckline. Even if one were to zoom in and look at it carefully, one would still be amazed by how exquisite it was. This was simply a masterpiece. It was designed by a famous designer and handmade. It was definitely not empty talk. Not to mention Xianxia's devilish figure, which was perfectly reflected in this gown. The unique design on the chest, at first glance, was like a design made of peonies. It set off the two sections of her exquisite collarbones that were like jade. Those round and fair shoulders also showed off her ample bosom, but it was not overly revealing. It looked elegant and charming, noble and proper. At first glance, it looked like a proud peony. Her thick hair was meticulously coiled up. Even if there were no decorations, it was draped over her shoulders. There was no need for too much adornment, but it still gave off an unruly beauty. Her previous image was like the pure and beautiful style in The Green Apple, and the antique beauty in Lethal Beauty. She had never been as domineering as she was today. It turned out that her beauty could also be so flamboyant. Wuxia's gaze suddenly fell on her face. Her small face had been carefully sculpted by the stylist and was delicately painted with makeup. Xianxia was originally a natural beauty. Even without any makeup, she had a face that people could not bear to look away from. At this moment, after the makeup, her beauty had a unique dark color. The gown was designed in Han Chinese. The makeup was also designed to match the design of the gown, using the crystal peach blossom makeup. The stylist did not go with the trend. Instead, he used a combination of Chinese and Korean makeup. Her curved willow-like eyebrows were slightly smooth, and light brown eyebrow powder that outlined her eyebrows, thick and curly long. Even if she said that she envied Wuxia's eyelashes, her eyelashes, thick and curly and long. Even if she said that she envied Wuxia's eyelashes, her eyelashes, thick and long eyelashes, was thick and curly long. Her eyelashes were thick and long. Chapter 1770. What did it mean to capture a person's soul? It probably meant that with just one look, one's heart would be tightly grasped and not let go. It was as though one was possessed by a demon. Like a demon, like a charm, her eyes were like silk. Her fair and translucent makeup looked like it could be broken with a flick of a finger. Her skin was naturally good, and her soft red lips were embellished with a little lipstick. The bright red lipstick didn't appear gaudy, but instead gave a direct visual impact. Her black hair, black eyes, and red lips were moist and moist. When the corners of her lips curved slightly, it was like a blooming flower. He couldn't wait to kiss it and smell that sweet fragrance. Wuxia's throat tightened slightly. He held his breath deeply and held it. His gaze fell on her body, but he couldn't bear to look away. It was as though he had tasted a mouthful of wine that had been sealed for 100 years. Just one mouthful and his heart felt slightly tipsy. Even his body felt a little hot. But he knew in his heart that this reaction wasn't because he had drunk the wine. The man suddenly stood up and walked in front of her. When Xianxia saw him approaching, his gaze landed on her body without blinking. For a moment, she couldn't help but feel nervous. She was even more nervous than the last time she acted in front of the camera. When she was done with her makeup, she also took a look at herself in the mirror. But when she saw herself in the mirror, other than being stunned, She also felt a little uncomfortable. She had never thought that she would have such a beautiful moment. In the past, she had neglected to dress herself up. Even if she put on makeup, it would be light makeup and a little powder. However, today's makeup was done meticulously. After a full hour, she looked at herself in the mirror and saw how she had changed from a pure and elegant face to such a beautiful and alluring face. Women weren't born works of art. The sculpting in the later stages was especially important. When she saw the man approaching her, her throat felt a little dry. She asked nervously, "How is it? Is it okay?" Wuxia walked in front of her and lowered his head to look at her face. Her hair was all tied up. At this point, her palm-sized little face was completely revealed. However, a few strands of hair naughtily fell by her ear. He suddenly reached out and tucked those strands of hair behind her ear. Because of his careless touch, she shyly lowered her head. Her elf-like ears were actually slightly hot and red. It was obvious that she was shy. This little idiot was always so easily embarrassed. Furthermore, due to the nature of her skin, even the slightest bit of shyness would quickly show itself. Noticing that she was lowering her head, he reached out his finger and lifted her chin with some dissatisfaction. "Raise your head and let me see." Xianxia raised her face shyly, but the corners of her eyes drooped slightly. Her eyelashes, which were like black phoenix feathers, flickered and trembled from time to time. It was obvious that she was too nervous. Oh God! How could she be so nervous? What a disappointment! Xianxia was secretly embarrassed and annoyed. She couldn't help but clench her fists a little tighter. However, she heard his mellow voice say warmly above her head, "Very beautiful." The sudden voice made the air in her brain thin for a few seconds. Her face heated up even more. Really? She looked at him and saw that the amazement in his eyes was undisguised. His heart was moved. It was more than just his heart being moved. Chapter 1771. His body was slightly warm. He really liked how she was dressed up. He opened his mouth again and said with a smile, "You look very beautiful like this." He used an exclamation. Even if it was just a short sentence, it was undoubtedly the highest praise he could give her. When the designers standing behind him heard this, they were also deeply encouraged. To them, when their designs were worn by a beautiful woman, it was the greatest affirmation. To be able to receive Wuxia's approval made them even more elated. To the designers, to be able to receive the approval of this distinguished guest in front of them was the highest praise. However, at this time, they were still sensible and knew how to observe the situation. The two of them looked at each other, understood tacitly, and quietly left. The door was tightly shut. In the huge bedroom, only the two of them were left. Wuxia reached out and hugged her waist. The tailoring of the exquisite design behind her back was extraordinarily good. This gown was especially comfortable on her body. It wasn't tight or loose. Every inch of curve seemed to be completely natural. He hugged her and pulled her into his embrace. From the angle where he lowered his head, he could see her pair of eyelashes fluttering like butterfly wings. They were thick and long, gentle and lovely, and set off her moving temperament. He couldn't help but nod his head and lightly kiss her fluttering eyelashes. Soft kisses fell between her eyebrows, the corners of her eyes, the tip of her nose, the edge of her lips, and finally to her elegant and beautiful neck. The kiss was deep, but his eyes were burning hot. This was his fiancée. The woman who would hold his hand for the rest of his life. His only wife. She was so beautiful that it was as if she didn't eat the food of mortals. She was like a fairy that no one could profane. Xianxia couldn't help but laugh a little. She pushed him, but he didn't know that he was satisfied and couldn't bear to leave her. His hand cupped the back of her head and he kissed her lips. He didn't forcefully seize it, nor did he attack the city. Instead, he carefully and gently decorated it over and over again. He wanted to taste it. It was like kissing a piece of art, a rare treasure. He loved it, but he couldn't bear to use too much strength. Xianxia pushed him away and looked up. However, when she saw the lipstick on his thin lips, she laughed again. "Your lips are stained with lipstick." Wuxia's handsome brows furrowed and he couldn't help but purse his lips. This time, it was even more obvious. Thus, he subconsciously reached out to wipe it off, but she stopped him. "Don't move. I'll clean it for you." She carefully reached out her fingers and used her fingertips to gently wipe the lipstick off his thin lips, little by little. Mu Yaja remained motionless as he allowed her to wipe him. He thought to himself that this was probably the happiest moment of his life. She had once fantasized that if it was their wedding, he would be like the other grooms-to-be, nervous, uneasy, excited, and excited. However, right now, there was probably no nervousness or uneasiness. It was just that his excitement and excitement were reflected in reality. Strictly speaking, this was not his first engagement. In the past, under Mu Shang's repeated requests, he had to comply with the imperial decree and hold a forced engagement with Mu Wanru. Chapter 1772. At that time in his heart, the engagement ceremony was not that sacred, and there were not many expectations. It was just a dispensable ceremony. As long as the person was there, it was fine. The engagement ceremony was held in the hotel, and everything was carried out according to the normal procedures. Just before the engagement ceremony, he rushed over from the company's morning meeting. Looking at Mu Wanru's face, he was not touched. Instead, he felt a deep sense of disgust from the bottom of his heart. At that time, the engagement ceremony did not leave a deep impression on him. Among the blessings that were either feigned civility or had ulterior motives, he went through the entire process as if he was putting on a show. He had never thought that there would be a day when he would put so much effort into an engagement ceremony. Xianxia did not know how much effort he had put into this engagement ceremony. Everything was done by himself. Even this huge bedroom was redecorated according to his ideas by the designers. But now, when he saw his fiancée standing in front of him with a sweet smile, his heart was greatly touched. Mu Yaja curled his lips slightly, but he could not help but smile. He caressed her cheek as if he had not had enough. Xianxia slapped his hand away coquettishly. "Don't touch. You're going to ruin my makeup." But he said, "You'll look good even if you ruin it." Xianxia was stunned. She did not expect that he would take the initiative to say such sweet words of love. She laughed and teased him. "I didn't expect that sometimes your mouth can be so sweet." Mu Yaja glanced at her and caught the secret smile in her eyes. He reached out and easily caught her hand. Nodding his head again, he covered her mouth with his and whispered, "I never lie. You're good-looking, and you're good-looking." "Hey, are you trying to bewitch me?" Xianxia said coquettishly. "Stop it. Don't try to confuse me with sweet words." "Really?" Mu Yaja emphasized again and again. "My wife, the world's most beautiful woman. The world's most beautiful woman." These 5 words were about to send her to the clouds of happiness. Xianxia pursed her lips and couldn't stop laughing. As she laughed, she gently poked his chest with her finger. "My husband is also the world's most obedient." Sometimes, the words he said made people's hearts feel as sweet as honey. In her heart, his image had always been unsmiling. He was always cold and resolute, but she didn't expect him to have such a gentle side. "Obedient?" Mu Yaja repeated this word in his heart and furrowed his brows. "Yes." Mu Yaja laughed deeply. This was the first time someone had used the word obedient to describe him. Listening to his laughter, Xianxia could not help but indulge in it, and her heart collapsed. His voice was extremely low, and when he laughed, it was extremely magnetic. It possessed an extraordinary bewitching power, and people couldn't help but be captivated. She didn't have any ability to resist his laughter. Mu Yaja raised his eyebrows and pinched her nose. "Obedient? Are you sure you want to use this word to describe me?" "Can't I?" "Either way, it's all up to you." Xianxia suddenly couldn't help but hug him. Her hands folded behind his waist, and her face gently rested on his chest. There was a kind of dreamlike happiness. Chapter 1773. Mu Yaja gently caressed her silky hair, only to hear her say worriedly, "If you continue to spoil me like this, won't you spoil me?" Would he spoil her until she became even more arrogant, willful, and unruly? However, Mu Yaja said matter-of-factly, "I should spoil you until you're unruly, like a little princess, willful and arrogant. I'll spoil you more than anyone else." She couldn't help but feel a little surprised. "Why?" He looked down at her and smiled gently. "Because this way, you won't be able to leave me." He would spoil her a little more. She would rely on him a little more. He liked her dependence. Even if they were together, he would never tire of it. If Lu Jinyu were present at this moment and saw this scene, he would definitely sigh like an old man. This is the sour smell of love. What a torment for single people. At the same time, he would also silently complain that Boss was such a cold-hearted man. Who would have thought that he couldn't escape the fate of being a slave to his wife even when he was deeply in love? Xianxia didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Slave to his wife. His wife came first. She was also happy. Wuxia glanced out of the corner of his eye and saw a pair of red high heels quietly placed on the low table. He suddenly picked her up and carried her to the sofa. Then, he knelt on one knee in front of her and picked up one of her high heels with one hand. His other hand, under her skirt, easily grabbed one of her fair and tender feet. His touch made her involuntarily shrink back shyly. However, he didn't allow her to retreat and held her foot firmly in his hand. Her feet were really not big. They were only about size 35 to 36. She was not short, but her small feet were not even as big as his palm. She was so small, and her hands were so small. Even this pair of jade feet could be held in one hand. "You!" she suddenly spoke up, trying to stop him. He raised his eyes to look at her. His handsome eyes were deep and his gaze was burning. She immediately blushed and nervously grabbed the corner of her skirt, crumpling it. Looking at this posture, was he going to personally try on the high heels she would wear at the engagement party? However, seeing him kneeling on one knee and lowering himself, she couldn't help but feel a little uncomfortable. He had always been high and mighty, like an emperor. Now that he was kneeling on one knee in front of her, she felt a little shy. At the thought of this, she immediately blushed and said, I can do it myself. No need, you sit down. As he said this, he held her foot and gently put the beautiful red high heels on her foot. It was neither too big nor too small, just right. The red high-heeled shoes did not have any repetitive design. The shiny slanted shoes set off a luxurious and elegant feeling. He then put it on the other high heels for her. As if he's. In contrast to hers, his was as if serving her shoes was a matter of course, and there was nothing to be surprised about. After putting it on, he helped her stand up. The skirt fell to the ground, covering a pair of jade feet. She walked back and forth, and the high heels fit her perfectly. Chapter 1774. Just as he was about to walk toward her, there was a knock on the door. Xianxia looked over curiously, thinking that it was the designer outside. In the end, the door was opened from the outside before she could let him in. Xianghu's chattering voice reached their ears. "Xianxia, are you there? I heard from them that you're in this room." Hearing this, Xianxia's brows furrowed tightly. She knew who had come. Xianghu, Yun Qingmiao, and Xianxia arrived at the castle in a car right after they got off the plane. After the butler settled the three of them down, Yun Qingmiao and Yun Qinli went into a frenzy. They were still guessing where Xianxia and Wuxia's wedding would be held. They thought that Xianxia's wedding would be held in a romantic place like Bali, Sanya, or the Sea of Love. After they got off the plane, they thought that the hotel was arranged for them. However, when they heard that the destination was a private island, they did not get it until they got off the plane and were sent to the castle. The sisters were utterly shocked. A castle. A castle built on a private island. They stood at the castle's entrance and looked up at the majestic, palace-like retro castle. From afar, it was noble and gorgeous, filled with the classical style of medieval European royalty. At first, they were still in disbelief and convulsion. It was only when the butler welcomed them in that they dared to believe what was happening before their eyes. Oh God! How rich is Xianxia's fiancé? To be able to own his own castle on a private island, he must be worth at least hundreds of millions of yuan. They heard that there were exclusive helicopters and luxury yachts on the island. How could they not be shocked when these luxuries, which they had only seen on the news, appeared before their eyes in real life? Does all of this belong to Wuxia? In that case, all of this will belong to Xianxia in the future too. Oh God! Oh God! For a moment, too many exclamations came to their minds. Yun Qingmiao and Yun Qinli toured the castle excitedly as if they were looking at a work of art. They could not hide the surprise on their faces. There was no need to mention how envious the sisters were of Xianxia. Which girl didn't dream of having a castle of their own? However, all of this could only be imagined. Who would have thought that Xianxia would have everything so real? Yun Qingmiao in particular was so jealous that her eyes were red. She wanted it too. She wanted a private jet, a private castle, a yacht, and a beach. She wanted everything she could see. Vanity was like a germ, quickly spreading and occupying one's heart. When they opened the door and saw Xianxia in a luxurious and elegant gown, the three of them were stunned. Then, they surrounded her with envy. When they passed through the arched door, Xianghu saw Wuxia. She was startled for a moment, then her lips curled into a warm smile. "Little Mu, you're here too." Because of the angle just now, he didn't see him immediately. Upon seeing Wuxia, Yun Qingmiao and Yun Qinli exchanged glances and smiled sweetly. "Brother Mu. Brother-in-law-to-be." Wuxia only gave a low hum of acknowledgement, but the smile on his face quickly faded and became a little colder. Chapter 1775. "Yes. We just arrived. We heard that you're here, so we rushed over to see you." Xiangyu's smile was incomparably affectionate, and there was a fawning look in her eyes as if she was trying to get close to her. Yun-Shirshir, however, asked awkwardly, "Why didn't you knock before coming in?" This question stumped Xiangyu. Yun Qingmiao grinned and said, "The door isn't locked, so we pushed it open and came in. Did we disturb you?" The door was not locked, so they pushed it open and came in. Wasn't this reason a little too pompous? This room was her personal space, after all. How could they enter without knocking or asking for permission? Knocking on the door was out of courtesy, and they could only enter after asking if it was convenient. Yun Shirshir smiled and asked, "Since you just arrived, did the butler arrange a room for you?" "Yes. It's just that the room is a little small," answered Xiangyu. "Small?" Yun Shirshir glanced at Wuxia with a puzzled look. Yun Qinli, who was beside her, said, "Oh, it's not small. It's just that it's a little cramped for 3 people." Wuxia said, "The butler may have been negligent. I'll arrange another room for you right away." Xiangyu, however, said politely, "Hey, it's fine. Don't be so busy. Let Auntie take a look at you." As she spoke, she walked toward Yun Shirshir, held her shoulders and sized her up. "Oh my! This dress is so pretty. The material is so good. You must have spent a lot on it, right?" Yun Qingmiao and Yun Qinli came over as well, looking at her dress with envy and yearning in their eyes. "Sister Shirshir, is this the dress you wore for your engagement? It's so beautiful. The red dress is so festive. More importantly, this dress looks especially elegant on Shirshir. Shirshir, you're so beautiful, just like a princess." Yun Qingmiao continued to bewitch her too, so much so that Yun Shirshir could not get used to their competing praises for a while. What's going on? Why was he suddenly so enthusiastic towards her? Yun Shirshir was confused for a moment and looked at them in a daze. Seeing her in a daze, Xiangyu covered her mouth and laughed. "Look, Shirshir is shy." Yun Qingmiao immediately retorted, "Shirshir, you're a bride-to-be. How can you be shy? But look, Qinli, Shirshir and Brother Mu look so good together." Yun Qinli smiled and said, "What Brother Mu? Sister, you should change the way you address him. You should call him future brother-in-law." Yun Shirshir was a little overwhelmed. What was going on? 2 days ago, they were still saying a few words of jealousy to her from time to time. Why did their attitude change completely today? Yun Qingmiao, who was secretly sizing up Wuxia, could not help blushing. The man in front of her was dressed in a well-tailored suit. His black hair was styled with mousse, which made him look even more dashing and handsome. His deep-set eyes were as mesmerizing as the stars, dark and endless. However, when he swept a glance over, his arrogant and cold gaze made her heart skip a beat. No woman would be able to resist his charm if they stood before him. Chapter 1776. He could not help but frown. With just a glance, he knew what she was shy about. Yun Shirshir also noticed her sister's gaze on Wuxia. Her brows knitted together in slight displeasure. Xiangyu was still enthusiastically talking about something, but at the same time, her tone was secretly trying to find out more information. "Shirshir? I still don't know what Xiao Mu's job is." As she spoke, she suddenly pulled her to the side by the arm and asked enviously, "Is Xiao Mu's family especially rich? I was shocked when I saw that he had a private jet and a castle yacht. At first, I thought that he was just an ordinary white-collar worker, but now, it seems that he's not that simple." Yun Qingmiao pretended to ask casually, "Shirshir, what's the background of our future brother-in-law? You haven't told us about him. Is it because you don't treat us as your family? Xianxia quickly chimed in. That's right. Tell us, and we'll give you a reference to check him out. Xianxia frowned and glanced at Wuxia, only to see him standing there and patiently talking to Xianxia. Xianxia was like a happy little bird as she circled around Wuxia, looking at him with adoration and asking questions from time to time. Xianxia retracted her gaze and replied slowly. Him? He's an employee of the Mu Group. This was what Wuxia had said to her classmates during their class reunions. A CEO was also a type of employee, so she was just being more reserved in her words. Mu Group? Employee? Xianxia was surprised to hear that. She had never heard of the Mu Group. She had never come into contact with the business world, so she did not know what kind of status the Mu Group had in the business world. An employee, though. It did not look like one, right? How could an ordinary employee afford a private jet and such a huge island of the dead? Sure, are you hiding it from me, or are you also kept in the dark? He doesn't look like a company employee at all. I think he must be a rich second-generation heir with a net worth of billions. Otherwise, how could an engagement ceremony be so extravagant? As soon as Xianxia finished speaking, Wuxia seemed to have heard her voice and walked towards them. He walked forward and put his arm around Xianxia's shoulders in a very natural manner. He smiled politely and said, "This is not a big deal. Xianxia and I only have one engagement ceremony in our lives. Naturally, we have to make it grand." When Xianxia saw Wuxia walking over, she was startled. She was afraid that he had heard her words. However, when she saw that he was polite and didn't seem to be angry, she felt relieved. "Xiao Mu, you haven't introduced yourself yet. Since you are Xianxia's fiancé, as Xianxia's aunt, and Xianxia is my only niece, I have to check on her. Our Xianxia is gentle and virtuous. Since you've decided to marry her, then you should take a look. Since she's already your fiancé, then it's my responsibility as an aunt to inquire about your family situation." These words were said in an extremely dignified manner. Xianxia just wanted to see what kind of family Wuxia was from. She was just being vain. Chapter 1777. Check. Wuxia raised his eyebrows and quickly understood her intentions. Xianxia was a little angry when she heard Xianxia's words. What did she mean by being her aunt and checking for her? What right did she have to check for her? What did it have to do with her, who she was marrying, the status of the person she was marrying, and his family background? Could it be that when she got married, she had to know everything about the person she was going to marry? Regardless of whether he was rich or poor, she had her eyes on this man and wanted to spend the rest of her life with him. If she said that, it would make others misunderstand that she chose to be with Wuxia because of his family background. Xianxia was so angry that her face flushed red. Her face, which was originally covered in rouge, was now even redder. Wuxia lowered his head to look at her and knew that she was a little unhappy. "Hence," he said, "Xianxia is my fiancée and the wife that I have decided to be with for the rest of my life. There is no doubt about my feelings for her. Of course, the so-called sincerity is not something that can be proven with empty words. I will only say that regardless of whether I am rich or poor, even if I have to give up everything, I will not let her suffer. Moreover, the so-called power, wealth, and status are never eternal. But my sincerity towards her will never change in this lifetime." His voice was deep and mellow, with a charming magnetism. His words were not to be refuted. Xianxia was stunned. His sincere confession was so deep and sincere that it indirectly refuted her words. Instead, it made her words seem even more pretentious. Who was Wuxia? He had been on the battlefield for a long time and had traveled through bloody battles. He had seen many schemes. No matter who it was, what they were thinking, he could see through it all with just one look. How could Xianxia's narrow-mindedness escape his eyes? With just a few words, she had no choice but to shut up. His invisible and imposing aura made her feel a little light-headed and light-footed. This man's aura was not ordinary. His words were overbearing, making people have no choice but to submit to him. Xianxia smiled awkwardly and nodded. "That's right. What power? What wealth? It's all fake. Only sincerity was real. The most important thing is that you care about Xianxia and the two of you are happy together. It's good that you understand." Wuxia paused for a moment, then said in a deep voice, "Now, I'm going to bring Xianxia to meet a few of my important guests. Please return to your room. If you need anything, just instruct the housekeeper. Don't go out and walk around as much as possible. Be careful not to get lost." With that, he hugged Xianxia and left the room without looking back. Xianghu was momentarily stunned by his domineering declaration. She stood rooted to the ground, unable to recover her senses for a long time. Yun Qingmiao, who was behind her, was more observant. She could vaguely detect a hint of mockery in Mu Yaja's words. Her face turned pale as she tugged at her mother's clothes. "Mom, what you said just now was too straightforward. People will think that we haven't seen the world." "Humph. This brat clearly doesn't put me, his aunt, in his eyes." After Xiangyu came back to her senses, she was clearly very angry. Chapter 1778. She should be thankful that she was Yun Xiaxia's aunt. Even if she were to spend her entire life like this, it would be impossible for her to stand before Mu Yaja and let him take a look at her. Having said that, Xiangyu couldn't say anything else. The three of them could only return to their room resentfully. However, just as Mu Yaja had expected, they really got lost in the huge castle. Helpless, they could only ask the butler to bring them back to their room awkwardly. Along the way, Yun Xiaxia was still puzzled. She didn't know who this man was bringing her to see. It wasn't until they arrived at the reception room that she saw Lu Jinyu sitting on the sofa and smoking a cigarette that she suddenly realized what was going on. The moment Lu Jinyu saw Mu Yaja push open the door and enter, he saw the woman in his arms. He immediately stood up and greeted with a smile. "Chief sister-in-law." Yun Xiaxia smiled at him politely. She had a better impression of him after he helped her at the hospital last time. However, facing the lingering smoke in the reception room, she still frowned uncomfortably and waved her hand slightly. She actually didn't like the smell of cigarettes. It was very suffocating. However, Lu Jinyu knew how to read people's expressions. Seeing that she seemed to be a little disgusted by the smell of cigarettes, he immediately put out the cigarette in his hand in the ashtray. Yun Xiaxia was touched by his action. He knew how to take a woman's feelings into consideration. This man should be an elegant gentleman with good etiquette. There were three other unfamiliar men sitting in the reception room. They also stood up behind Lu Jinyu and greeted Mu Yaja. "Boss." One of the handsome men, who looked slightly younger, looked at Yun Xiaxia with a hint of surprise in his eyes. However, more than that, he couldn't hide his amazement. "This must be sister-in-law." Yun Xiaxia smiled politely. "Hello," Mu Yaja said. "Let me introduce you. This is your sister-in-law, my fiancée. From now on, all of you should follow Jinyu and call her sister-in-law." When everyone heard this, they first glanced at Yun Xiaxia and smiled at each other. Then they said in unison, "Hello, sister-in-law." Yun Xiaxia did not know whether to laugh or cry at such a situation. "They are? You didn't even introduce them to me." Yun Xiaxia secretly rebuked. Mu Yaja introduced Lu Jinyu. "You should have met this man before. Lu Jinyu is in charge of all the affairs of the corporation under me. He's very capable." Lu Jinyu smiled and said, "Sister-in-law, we met a few days ago. You should still remember me." Yun Xiaxia pretended to be confused and said, I don't remember." Lu Jinyu turned pale with fright. "No way. Sister-in-law. It's only been 2 days and you've already forgotten about me." After saying that, he couldn't hide the disappointment and sadness on his face. Yun Xiaxia giggled, but she was a little shy. "I'm just kidding. It's all thanks to your help at the hospital that day. How could I forget?" Lu Jinyu was stunned, but he laughed out loud. His sister-in-law was really cute sometimes. This is Jiang Shen. Don't be fooled by his baby face. He's actually 27 years old. Mu Yaja introduced the man who looked exceptionally young and tender. Jiang Shen immediately protested. "Boss, you can't do this. I'm only 18 years old." Chapter 1779. Judging from his appearance, she had thought that he was underage. It turned out that he was only 1 year younger than Mu Yaja. Mu Yaja then proceeded to introduce the rest of the team members. They were all his right-hand men, who were in charge of all the affairs of the Xianghu Financial Group. For example, Jiang Shen looked young, but he was the financial director of the Xianghu Financial Group and firmly controlled the financial power. Another was Pei Xiaoyu, the public relations director of the Jianghu Financial Group. He was about 25 or 26 years old and looked gentle and refined. The last was a slightly older man, Jing Cheng. The four of them were also attending the engagement party as Mu Yaja's brothers. After Mu Yaja's introduction, the four men immediately gave Xianxia a friendly and respectful smile. The four of them addressed her as sister-in-law, but Xianxia was a little at a loss. She blushed slightly. This was the first time she was facing Mu Yaja's brothers, so she couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. However, after interacting with each other, they were all experts in EQ. After laughing and chatting, they easily dispelled the awkward atmosphere. They all had a close and friendly attitude towards Xianxia. After all, she was Mu Yaja's fiancée, so they naturally liked her. Jiang Shen even circled Xianxia twice and sighed in amazement. "You're indeed the woman that boss likes. Sister-in-law, you're really elegant. This is the gown that you'll wear at the engagement party, right? Oh, sister-in-law, you're so beautiful in it. You're just like a fairy." Lu Jinyu joked, "Jiang Shen, don't mess around. Boss is still standing here. Don't be fooled by boss's usual behavior. He's actually a big vinegar jar. If you get too close to him, he'll be jealous." Jiang Shen was slightly surprised. Then, he immediately kept a distance from Xianxia. "Boss, don't misunderstand. I don't have any feelings for sister-in-law." Lu Jinyu said, "Jiang Shen, you didn't see that last time. I just helped sister-in-law up." His gaze almost killed me on the spot. If looks could kill, I would have died a long time ago. When everyone heard this, they burst into laughter again. The atmosphere in the reception room quickly livened up. It seems that after getting married, boss must be a slave to his wife. He'll listen to his wife. I'm afraid that we won't have any status in the future. Lu Jinyu sighed and shook his head as he said this. Mu Yaja shot him a look, and he immediately shut his mouth, not daring to say another word. Jiang Shen, who was standing at the side, said coolly, "Jinyu, be careful with your words and actions. You'd better be careful with your words. Boss is very vengeful. If you offend him, you might lose your year-end bonus this year." Lu Jinyu immediately said pitifully, "No, boss, you'd better not to be a problem, boss. I'm still hoping to earn some money and find a wife in the future. You have a wife, but the rest of us are still single. You mustn't make things difficult for us." Everyone burst into laughter again. Xianxia realized that when he was with them, Mu Yaja's face was not as cold as usual. Instead, he had a warm smile on his face. He did not feel much disgust when he saw his brothers making fun of him. In the Mu group, he had always been a man of his word. He gave people a feeling that he was very unapproachable. Chapter 1780. As his left and right arms, the four of them were all young and capable. Mu Yaja had taken a fancy to their character and talent, so he recruited them. From the establishment of the Jianghu Financial Group until now, the five of them had gone through storms together. It could be said that they had many years of revolutionary feelings and had long cultivated a tacit understanding that was as close as brothers. With just a glance, they could understand each other tacitly. Lu Jinyu suddenly asked, "Boss, didn't the two young masters come?" Mu Yaja looked at her. Xianxia immediately explained, "They got off the plane and are a little tired, so they're resting in their room for a while. You'll see them tomorrow. The children are still young. After such a long journey, they must be tired. They should rest," Jiang Shen said. As he spoke, he suddenly presented a treasure. "Sister-in-law, I've specially prepared a mysterious gift for you at this engagement banquet." Xianxia was a little curious. "What gift?" "You'll be able to see it tomorrow. Wait and see. You'll definitely like it." Jiang Shen was smug and obviously very confident. Lu Jinyu mercilessly undermined him. "If sister-in-law doesn't like it, you'll be embarrassed. It's better than you. You came empty-handed. How can you have the nerve to criticize me?" "What do you mean I came empty-handed? I've prepared a big red packet for sister-in-law this time." Jiang Shen ruthlessly disdained. "How tacky." Lu Jinyu instantly felt hurt and looked at Xianxia pitifully. Xianxia saved the situation. "I don't think it's tacky. It's a big red packet. How big is it?" "See. Sister-in-law likes it." As he spoke, Lu Jinyu smiled mysteriously and winked at Xianxia. It's a very big red packet. You'll know when you count it. Xianxia smiled and did not take his words to heart. Still, it was true that she was shocked by Lu Jinyu's handiwork afterward. She thought that the so-called big red packet would be at most 6 figures, which was already impressive. And the result? Lu Jinyu, on the other hand, had prepared a total of 7 figures in red packets. Most of them were treasured currencies from various countries. There were several large gift boxes. Xianxia counted them so many that her hands were about to cramp. Xianxia didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Was this guy going to give her all his savings in a red packet? Of course, this was all in the future. After returning to her room from the reception room, Xianxia had dinner and decided to rest early. Tomorrow was the engagement party. She was nervous and slightly excited. She suddenly thought of something. She turned on the desk lamp and dialed Gong Jie's number. However, the number she dialed was not within the service area. Her heart suddenly felt a little gloomy. An indescribable desolation appeared on his face. Did he turn off his phone? Or was he purposely avoiding her? Was he still unwilling to attend her engagement party? When he thought of this, what followed was a huge disappointment. Perhaps she shouldn't have forced him to be there. It might not be a bad thing if he didn't come. After all, Gong Jie's hatred for the Mu family was already in his bones and blood. It was difficult to get rid of it. He did not strongly oppose her marriage to Mu Yaja, which was already the greatest satisfaction he could give her.